I saw a deer with forward-facing eyes. It followed me home. I first saw the deer a week ago. My boyfriend and I went hiking last weekend. It was for our anniversary, and we finally had some time off work to spend some time with one another. My boyfriend, Aaron, was so excited. He'd grown up in the mountains, and so he loved the idea of us heading out to his hometown to hike. It was sweet seeing him this happy. We'd been in a bit of a slump in our relationship because of work. He'd been put on nights and I still worked days, so we rarely saw each other. We had tried our best to see each other at home, but it was hard. This is exactly what we needed. Some quality time together. "You're gonna love this place," he had told me in the car. I promise. God, I wish that was true. It didn't take us long to reach his hometown. Smooth sailing, all things considered. Traffic was light, sun stayed up throughout, and the tunes were on point. It was your standard rural town. It was quiet and reserved, the place adorned with adorable little mom-and-pop shops and a miniature fountain in the center. We found this cute little cabin on the outskirts of town. It was small, but unbelievably cozy when you put the fire on. One thing that stood out to me was that the place was littered with huge pine trees. Aaron told me how proud he was when he climbed one of them as a kid. I shrugged it off. I mean, it's a tree, but oh my God. I understood how amazing of a feat that was now. These things were massive. They pierced through the clouds like giant shards of green. My neck killed after watching them for so long. I had never seen trees this big before. It was like they kept rising and rising and never stopped. There were tons of snowy mountains too. They encircled the town like a mighty wall, protecting it from outside dangers. It was simply breathtaking. Much different than the desert I grew up in. His parents still lived there, so we went to their place for dinner when we finished unpacking. They are a lovely couple. I hadn't eaten that well in a while. His mom made a spicy meatloaf and I ate so much of it. I had to pop my belt afterwards. Aaron couldn't really handle the spice, so it was hilarious seeing him gulp down liters of water in between each tiny morsel. His face was flushed after. So was his dad's. They looked so much like each other. Once dinner was finished, we all sat in their living room, nursing glasses of wine. Aaron drank the rest of his water. We left around 8 p.m. I can remember it because we wanted to head back before it was totally dark. The sun was setting, plunging the streets into shadow. The moon had been up for a while and now it had begun to shine beautifully against the darkening blue of the twilight sky. Street lamps hadn't been switched on yet, so we had to drive slowly and be on the lookout for people or animals. The lights from the shops became pinpricks in the rearview mirror, and eventually we reached the western outskirts of the town. I was lucky that Aaron knew the roads inside and out. I would have crashed as soon as we reversed out of his parents' driveway. We were quiet on the trip back. I think we didn't know what to talk about. "Well, I'm full." Aaron's voice broke the silence. "Yeah, me too." I gave a soft laugh. The car was noiseless again before we both spoke at the same time. "Are you okay?" We matched each other. For the first time in a while, the pair of us laughed together. It was gentle but genuine. It was nice. "Yeah, I'm okay," I giggled. "You?" "Yeah, not bad." Aaron chuckled to himself, hands relaxing on the wheel. The silence wasn't as tense anymore. We knew we were tired. That's all. "The trail's going to look so pretty tomorrow," he chirped, that big smile of his returning to his face. I was going to say something when he immediately stuck his arm out and hit my chest, creating a barrier to hold me back. He stomped his foot on the brake, hard. He had held his arm out across my chest to keep me from plummeting forward into the windshield. It was so abrupt. I fell into his arm and had the air knocked out of my lungs. When the car jolted to a stop, I snapped backwards against the seat, narrowly avoiding banging the back of my head into the headrest. Aaron's arm was still shielding my chest when he fell backwards. Luckily, his head missed the headrest like myself, and he slowly leaned his neck back to put his head against the leather. We sat there, panting after the sudden stop. Aaron was looking forward, eyebrows furrowed and his mouth contorted into an open scowl. Came out of nowhere, he muttered under his breath. I stared onwards, eyes fixated on the object in the road. It was a deer. She was an average doe, antlerless, and she had pretty white freckles dotted on her back. She wasn't looking at us, though. Her head was facing the road ahead of us. Her ears were completely still, not even a quiver at the sound of the car screeching to a halt. A deer, I gasped out. Aaron had his lips pressed into a tight, thin line. I noticed his chest wasn't rising, and then came to the realization that he was holding his breath. His eyes were wobbling, tears forming. He hadn't blinked once since he slammed the brakes. In fact, he hadn't moved. What? He murmured in a wispy tone. He was breathless. I watched him with wary eyes, awaiting his reaction. I had never seen him this fearful before. It reminded me of a child staring into his closet when he heard a bump in the night. We sat there for another few seconds before I decided to take action and honk the horn. Looking back, I think this was the worst thing I had ever done. I pushed Aaron's arm towards him and I pressed harshly down on the horn. A quick beep echoed into the woods. I waited. The doe didn't move. I furrowed my brow and started to feel a strange discomfort in my skin. It was as if I had done something stupid. Hell, even illegal. This awful feeling ran up my neck. I was scared of a deer, of all things. The woods were pitch black by that point, and this unease made me want to head home as soon as we could. Aaron was obviously shaken. I hated feeling so afraid. So, out of embarrassment and anger, I yelled. I yelled at a deer. I moved back over to my side of the car and put the window down. I leaned out of it and yelled with as much power as my vocal cords could muster. Move. Fear definitely put some power behind my voice. As soon as the word left my lips, a rough hand ragged my shoulder back into the seat of the car. I looked back with confusion, only to see a horrified Aaron glaring at me. He put the window up and hissed, "What the hell are you doing?" "It's a deer," I snapped back, desperate to get away from the road and head home. "You haven't scared off a deer before?" Aaron shook his head in disbelief and turned back to the animal. I did so too, hoping that the deer had taken the hint and galloped off back into the undergrowth. It hadn't even flinched. The thing was still stuck there, neck twisted to the side and thin legs pinned straight. The dread washed over me, sending a horrible shiver down my spine. Maybe it was death? Then, as if it had heard me think, the deer ran off in the most awful way possible. It made me recoil so far back in my seat I was practically moving the chair back. It kept its legs straight and lobbled back into the bushes, like a crappy stop-motion movie. The deer kept its head facing away from us, bobbing back and forth. It looked like a spring bouncing around after you pull it back and let it go. It was jarring, seeing an elegant creature moving in such a disjointed way. It was slow too, taking its time to carefully plod back into the woods. Aaron and I looked at it disappear into the abyss of the pines, wide-eyed with disgust. He continued to stare at the animal before I had to shake him out of whatever trance he was trapped in. He shook his head and thrust the car into first gear, the pair of us eager to get into the cabin. It took another 10 minutes for us to reach it. Aaron was driving slightly above the speed limit, but I didn't blame him. I kept thinking about any logical reasons as to why the doe had behaved like that. When we eventually arrived, the pair of us sped walk inside and locked the door. Aaron double-checked all the windows were locked, and we stayed the night snuggled up in our bedroom watching a random drama on my laptop. The thought of the deer was fading now, with my consciousness nailing the whole thing down to tiredness. I had seen weird deer before. The idea of one being deaf or injured made more sense to me than it being anything unnatural. It was our anniversary tomorrow, and that was the main thing on my mind. Aaron, however, was twitchy all night. He was the one driving, so I could understand why he was unsettled. He's a good driver, and I guess that he was shocked he didn't see the deer earlier. The next morning was much better. Aaron woke me up with a breakfast in bed, much to my delight. He seemed much more calm than the night before. There was still a hint of nervousness behind his eyes, but I shrugged it off. I can't describe the happiness I felt just being there with him. The pair of us set off around 1, and the hike was supposed to last us for about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how long our breaks would be. It was supposed to be a wonderful couple of hours in nature. It was much longer than that. We told Aaron's parents that we'd be done by 4, and that we'd left a key under the doormat outside. We also told them which trail we were heading on, so they knew where we were if the worst case would happen. They then told us to look out for mountain lions, and we assured them we would. I was eager to get out there. Despite last night's events, it had been a while since I went hiking. But with Aaron by my side, I knew it was going to be a safe but fun trip. The first half of the trek was perfect. We walked around the forest, the great pines covering the mossy floor in shadow. The place was teeming with life, with squirrels dashing past our heads in the trees and birds chirping sweet songs in our ears. Aaron tried whistling back, to little response. "Guess my pitch is off," he chuckled. I gave it a go, and surprisingly, a couple of birds twittered back. Aaron feigned shock and snatched me up, before running with me down the trail, shouting, "You can have her, and she's mine." I was in complete stitches and laughed even harder when bewildered hikers walked past us, eyebrows raised and some giggling at our frantic display. At the end of the first half of the hike, we were rewarded with a scene of a beautiful lake. It was around there we stopped for a quick break. We sat on the side of the trail, watching the sun shimmering on the surface of the water. There were people all over it. Some were on canoes, some were windsurfing. Quite a lot of people were actually swimming. I could see their little heads bobbling around in the water. I think I took 20 pictures of the place. We stayed there a while before we set off back down the trail. The sun wouldn't go down for a while, so we took our time. I had completely forgotten about what happened last night. Aaron seemed a little bit on edge, but he was still grinning ear to ear. Sometimes I would see him look behind us. He disguised it as looking at me, but I knew of the real reason. The thought of that deer was still playing on his mind. In hindsight, I should have been more cautious too. Aaron lived here all of his childhood, so he knew what was normal around these woods. If Aaron was still anxious, I should have been too. The trail was still relatively busy. It was still early afternoon, so most people probably started hiking then. We'd walk past them, greeting fellow travelers. We could hear them behind us chatting about work or whose birthday it was that week. Normal things. We had less than half an hour left on our way back, and Aaron texted his parents to let them know. I looked up at the pines. The sun's rays tried their hardest to shine through the dense needles, showering the floor with little pinpricks of light. Then I heard a voice. It came from somewhere. I originally thought it came from in front of us. It could have been a hiker coming up the trail. The voice was faint, hardly above a whisper, although I would call it more of a groan. It was a rattling sound. I didn't think anything of it and waited to see who was walking up the trail. We went on, smiles still stretched across our faces. Unfortunately, no one ever walked past. I could see Aaron tense in his shoulders. He stuck his hand out and waggled it, prompting me to take it. I sped up and walked closer to him, holding his hand. He didn't look down at me, but he acknowledged my presence with a squeeze of my hand. I was going to turn and see if it was someone messing with us, but Aaron squeezed my hand again and looked at me with big eyes. He gave a soft shake of his head and gestured with his eyes to remain looking ahead. The voice grew louder the more we walked. It wasn't actually saying much, just a bunch of babbling. Sharp breaths punctuated every syllable. It kept changing its intonation too. One moment it would be as happy as a child, letting out stifled giggles. Other times it would be nervously whimpering. Sometimes it would be angry, like letting out growls and cut off yelps. It was almost as if it were speaking to us from all angles. Sometimes hisses would come from the left. Some gasps would come from the right. It wanted us to look at it. It got colder. The sun was still high in the sky, but a grim, cold wind had picked up, and I ended up having to put my hands in my pockets. We entered an area where there was debris on the ground, needles and sticks, that kind of thing. We walked a bit faster through this part, hoping to reach the exit as quickly as possible. We had to be less than 15 minutes away now, so we were close. Along with the crunching underfoot, the voice followed us. It was actually getting more vocal now, yipping and letting out whoops. Couldn't tell if they were happy screams or annoyed ones. It was close to us though. Horribly close. A rancid smell had started to permeate the air. Rotten meat with a hint of ammonia. Last time I smelt something like that, I went camping with my dad. Shot a buck right in front of me, and I can remember the sound of the bullets going past. He didn't even do anything with its corpse. He just slept by it for 3 nights, and that dreadful smell grew. I didn't sleep a wink. Instead, I watched it every night, imagining it jerking to life and taking its revenge. At the time, I wanted it to. It was one of the last times I ever went camping with him. Thankfully, old drunk. The crunches were clear, coming from all sides. I wanted to look, I really did. Aaron, however, kept a hand on my back and was almost pushing me along. So I kept looking forward. I wanted someone to come past us, a regular person, just so we had some company, to prove that this wasn't real. Then, we found out where the voice was. A loud snap of a twig echoed from right behind us. It caught us so off guard, we halted to a stop. Whatever was following us did as well. My heart hammered hard against my chest. It had been behind us the entire time. It had ceased its warbling and now was completely silent. There was no breathing. Nothing. I looked over at Aaron, pleading. He looked at me back, eyes locked on my face. His breathing went quiet and he mouthed, "Don't," to me. I returned my gaze to the road ahead and swallowed. I saw a marker on the left of me. We were close and could probably sprint to the exit. I was running through each of the signs and where they were when I heard a sound that sent an ice-cold shiver down my back. Aaron. The voice was so horribly familiar, yet so alien. It was my own voice, deep and gravelly. It was like whatever was behind us drawing out the sounds, testing its ability. Aaron bristled at the sound with a grimace. It sounded so much like me, except it was throaty and aged. It tried again with a higher pitch. It sounded more like me, but just not quite. The foul smell lingered, almost making me gag. It smelt so pungent and strong. I believe now that the smell was its breath. We didn't really smell anything like that before the voice came, and it must have been so close to us we had began to pick up on the scent. I don't know. My eyes made their way to Aaron's, who was looking back at me with a fear I had never seen before. He mouthed to me, "Run." That's all I needed. Before Aaron could react, I had already began sprinting down the trail, running as fast as my legs could take me. I jumped over the roots of the tree, trying not to fall. I heard Aaron behind me, his feet stomping against the ground. Soon, my legs were aching and my heart was desperately thudding, trying to keep up with the fact that I had sprinting for a while. I'm a desk jockey and do zero cardio, okay? I ran and ran and ran. I kept frantically looking for the markers. Hell, I was looking for the exit. Nothing but the endless rows of pine trees and the odd bushes dotted around. I had to stop. I didn't know where I was, and the sounds had gone quiet. Surely it would be okay for me to turn around. So I slowed to stop, legs wobbling from the adrenaline. I turned around and scanned the area. Aaron was nowhere to be seen. I had lost him. My stomach dropped to the floor. I spun around and watched. He was nowhere. How had I gone the wrong way? This trail had one road. I didn't change trail or reach any crossroads, but somehow I had managed to go further into the woods. It was impossible for me to not be at the opening. I took in huge gulps of air and started to look around and yell out for Aaron. My throat hurt so much. It was useless, really. My mind began to race. I had to figure out how to find the exit. I stood up and breathed in. Aaron? My blood froze. In my panic, I had totally neglected the fact I wasn't alone. The voice was ridiculously close to mine now, and the only thing holding it back from being an identical copy was the fact it hadn't nailed down my accent. I have a southern accent. This voice had something akin to someone with Valley Girl accent trying to do a southern one. It was a terrible impression, but it genuinely sounded like something I would come out with. Then, the next sound it made caused me to jump so far in the air, my knees cracked when I landed. It made the sound of a car horn honking. It was so ear-piercing and loud, my ears rang afterwards. It was short and punchy, like a little pip you'd do if the person in front hadn't moved when the lights go green. Now, I would have laughed at that. It's a car now, I would have thought. Instead, I thought, it's our car now? The warning beep I had given the deer that night just rang out in the middle of the woods. It did it again, louder this time. I think it was trying to make me scream or something because it kept making me jump when it did that. It kept on hopping from one place to another, searching for me. When I got closer, I backed up to one of the pines and held my breath. For all I knew, it could have been behind me. I just breathed. I kept my eyes forward like Aaron told me to, and breathed in, out, in, out. It's all I could do. The place went silent again, fear swirling in my stomach. I thought it found me. Then I felt something touch my shoulder. The fingers were long and they buried themselves into the flesh. Slowly, my eyes crept towards the hand, until eventually I followed the arm. It went up above me. When I saw what was there, I nearly screamed. There, crouched on one of the bigger branches of the pine, was Aaron with a finger to his lips. He held out his hand and braced himself against the branch, moving from a crouch to a seated position. I grabbed the hand hard, pushing myself upwards and towards the branch just below him. My right hand made it onto the branch, and I reached up with my left hand. Aaron pulled me upwards, careful to not fall himself. Just as I thought I'd made it safely onto the branch box, my left foot slipped and I smashed my knee against the bark. I bit back a yelp and bared my teeth. Oh my God, that hurt. I didn't even want to imagine looking down, so I weakly pulled my leg back up and made my way up the tree. The voice was further away now, the sound of Aaron's voice calling for me. It made us shudder. Eventually, we made it to a branch high enough to be safe and thick enough to hold us. We could see the ground through the gaps of the needles. I took a seat and looked at my knee. Blood made my blue leggings go a vile purple. Scratches in the fabric showed my ripped skin, as deep red trickled from the gashes. It stung like hell. Aaron placed a hand on my lower back and kissed my forehead. I fell into his touch and put my head into his neck. Wet dribbles of tears dripped into my scalp. Aaron was crying. He was always the more emotional one out of us. We established that quite early in our relationship when Aaron had held me, bawling over a nature documentary where a lion took down a gazelle. That was our second date. I can remember how I stared at him with disgust. A few years later, and I still do, but now I hug him back and laugh. Growing up in a poor household teaches you to control your emotions. One wrong look and shit hits the fan. I guess that's what drew me to Aaron in the first place. He did stuff like that, and nothing happened. His parents would chuckle instead of screaming at him. It was the nicest kind of weird I have ever experienced. The voice had rounded back to our tree, and it was back to mimicking me. Move. Once again using what I told it last night to coax us out. It did this for about a minute, and then we saw a flash of a brown blur speed past the tree. The blur waddled backwards, reversing. Then I saw it. This deer wasn't a deer. We established this, but it didn't make the reveal any less horrifying. It didn't look at us and was looking deep into the forest. Then it heard something and faced our way. Its eyes weren't on the sides of its head. They were at the front, like a predator, like a human. They didn't look human. They were regular deer eyes, which I feel made it worse, small and beady. The sun was just setting, so the last bits of light reflected off the eyes. Once darkness began to hit, they changed. In the light of the sunset, I squinted and saw how it shook its head around violently. It looked up in an instant and faced away from the tree. Then it turned, and I saw how its eyes were blown out. Visibly, they had grown a lot, and now they were almost black. Better for searching. It spun around again and leapt off into the undergrowth. I heard a roaring sound before I heard a voice I didn't recognize. It was a little boy. "Aaron!" Aaron let out a gasp and slapped his hand over his mouth. Tears were in full flow now, and his hands were shaking. "Over here." Then a giggle, a childlike cough, and the worst sound of the lot, a young boy screaming bloody murder. Aaron clapped his hands over his ears and sucked in wet breaths. I wrapped my arms around him, stroking his flank. I could hear him muttering, "It's not Jake. It's not him," over and over. "Aaron," it continued to wail. "Mom, Dad." It was awful. Its voice kept on wavering back and forth between voices. It had seemingly perfected the Jake voice, as Aaron kept on choking on his breath whenever it copied the boy. It had pretty much decided that we were close because it stayed in the same position for the rest of the time we were up there, right next to the tree we were in. The sun had set fully then, so it was hard to see anything. My eyes adjusted, but it was still difficult. It went on and on, draining the pair of us. It got to the point where we were used to the screams and now realized that whatever was making the voices was doing it on a loop like a broken record. My voice, Aaron's, unknown boy, and then Jake. It was so mentally draining. I was fully considering jumping down and getting it over and done with. At least I would be dying or going missing with the one I loved, as dismal as that seems. I really couldn't think of anything else in the moment. It messed with me. As soon as I was going to close my eyes, a loud bang shot through the air. We heard a loud, warbling scream and the thundering sound of feet underneath. A gruff voice yelled our full names and ran around the tree. A couple more pairs of feet followed. This had to be the Rangers. "Up here," I called down to them. The flashlight beams shone around until they brought them up to our tree. Thankfully, it was the Rangers. We clambered down and were greeted with the sight of 3 park rangers and Aaron's dad, their faces ashy. I almost fell to my knees in joy and exhaustion. Aaron just caught me at the last second and choked out a sob. We had been found. Aaron carried me back to the entrance of the woods. The place looked so different in the dark. Aaron's mom was waiting for us with the other officers. She had been in floods of tears too, immediately running towards us. I had never felt so tired in my entire life. One of the officers took us to the hospital. I had splinters all in the gashes, and my muscles were exposed. Seriously gross stuff, but nothing was broken, so I wasn't worried. Everything happened so fast, you know? Aaron was fine, and that's all I cared about. It was our anniversary after all. It may surprise you to find out we headed home the very next day. We were quiet on the way back. I had so many questions to ask, but with one look at Aaron's face, I faced forward and closed my eyes. We were both too tired for talking. Once we got home, Aaron checked the house and collapsed on our bed. I stayed up and numbly watched a crappy comedy. No matter how much I watched, I could still hear the screams. Sometime I dropped off, don't know when, but when I woke up, Aaron was boiling some water. and the smell of coffee wafted its way to the living room. He walked in and handed me a cup, pressing a soft kiss to my temple with a warm smile. We sat in silence, dumbly watching the TV, when he sighed. "I'm sorry I took you there." I cocked my head. "It wasn't your fault." Silence. I knew what was in there. I held the cup of coffee and stared at him. "What?" He sniffled and coughed. "I remember everything." "What?" He turned to me, eyes watery. "Seeing it again." He shook his head. "Everything came back." What did that even mean? I opened my mouth before Aaron spoke again. "They told me his family moved away." His eyes were glassy now, swimming with memories. "Jake's family?" I was gentle, hoping to not set him off crying. He nodded and took a sip of his coffee. "One day he was there, the next he wasn't." "Now you know why?" He nodded again, morosely. We sat there for a while. "We were camping for our birthday." We had the same birthday. Aaron looked up, recounting the events like they happened yesterday. "It was our 12th. I let him speak. "We were so excited, Elle." His eyes fluttered. "Then we heard it." "The deer?" "Yeah, the deer." He let out a cruel laugh. If only. "What happened?" He took another sip before he started up again. "It called to us in our voices, saying stuff like 'over here' and our names." Aaron placed the cup on the table. "We thought it was funny." "I get that. You guys were kids." "Yeah, well, we found it so funny, we asked it to come out and wish us a happy birthday." "And?" "I have never seen something more horrible in my entire life." He shook slightly, face gradually going pale. "We screamed." "So, it didn't look like a deer, or it did, and we just didn't see its real form?" "We ran away, or I did. It's hard to remember." He wet his lips. "I can remember hearing Jake fall, and I turned to look at him. I reached over and rubbed his arm when he became emotional. He brought a hand up to his lips and stared at a corner of the room. I ran over and tried to pull him up." He gasped, "and it just batted me away like a fly." His eyes were downcast. "There was so much blood." He looked at me to respond, but I didn't and let him speak. "It dragged him away, and I ran so far, ended up climbing a tree and camping there for a while." "How long?" He shrugged. "All I know was that I sat there until the sun went down and the noises stopped. Then I ran home." "You tell your folks?" He nodded sheepishly. "They told the police, they went and checked it out, found blood and blamed it on a cougar." He forced out a laugh. Then it spoke to me." "It spoke to you?" I was leaned forward in my seat now. "Yes, when I was about to drift off to sleep." He lowered his voice to a whisper. "I'll come back to you. Then you can join them." I swallowed thickly. Why hadn't it come earlier for him? Was he trying to ripen him up? It just made me feel sick. "Did you see it again?" "No. I stayed out of the woods, and it didn't bother me anymore." The air was thick, hard to breathe. It must have used this hike as a chance to take him. "I could have saved him." "You were a kid, Aaron. So fucking what, he snapped at me. I could have saved him. Could you? He paused and watched me intently. His eyes bounced from one side to the next, seemingly going through every possible outcome. With a furrow of his brow, I guess he realized that he couldn't have done anything. He sat back in his seat on the sofa. His eyes were still cloudy, clearly still thinking. I leaned over and rested my head on his shoulder, holding his arm. Strange what the mind hides from you, huh? I didn't say anything. I mean, what can you say to that? We tried to get on with our lives. I went back to work, so did Aaron. We acted like we had the best anniversary of our lives, because what else could we do? Tell my manager that we had some kind of monster deer chase us down in the middle of the woods and we kept hearing it mimicking us and Aaron's dead childhood friend? See how ridiculous that sounds? So we put on our happy faces. It was harder for Aaron, obviously. He's looking to see a therapist. He's also talking with the police from his hometown over Jake's disappearance. Jake's parents are yet to say anything. Can't imagine what they're going through. He told me he couldn't live with himself if he stayed quiet. I try to look more on the positive side nowadays. I used to be very cynical, and I blame my upbringing for that. When I met Aaron, stuff changed. He was just so enthusiastic about life. Car broke down in the rain. Well, at least we have shelter. Lost your wallet? Well, we can always get a new one. You feel guilty for cutting contact with your parents? You had to do that for your safety. Always, he's been able to turn bad situations on their head and find the silver lining in the cloud, even if it's barely visible. He brought out that optimistic part of me that I hid for so long. He helped me out of that horrible pit and made me see the light in life again. Since that day, I've been seeing less and less of that happy-go-lucky guy. I'm not complaining at all, by the way, please know that. I'd be more disturbed if he just went on with life like nothing happened. But I feel like I've been taking him for granted. I want to help him through this. He helped me, so I'm going to help him too. He assures me I don't need to, but I will anyway. I love him. And if that means I wait on every hand and foot for him, I'll fucking do it. I thought we were in the clear after we left that place. Turns out I was wrong. This happened earlier today, and I'm still shook up writing this. I was at home after work, and I went upstairs to go change. It looked like Aaron had just left before my arrival because he left the bathroom light on. I was about to flip the switch when I saw something. It was a bit hard to see because of the frosted glass, but there was something outside. It was a dark, fragmented blob. I was tempted to open the window to see what it was. I mean, it could have been a piece of clothing that had came into the backyard. Suddenly, a shiver ran down my spine and I writhed in my spot. I halted and watched the blob. It was completely still, which put doubt on my clothing theory. It was quite windy outside, so the clothing would have wafted around or flown off. This thing stayed deathly still. It had 4 little stumps under it like table legs. Maybe they were legs. Cats often came into our yard, with the next door neighbor having 2 of them. It looked bigger than a cat, though. I blamed the frosted glass for the distortion, but that theory didn't last long either. The thing began to move. It lifted each of the stumps one by one, which now solidified my belief that this was indeed an animal, and then crouched down. Then, much to my horror, the thing lifted itself up onto two legs, body rising high into the air. It stood straight up, the stumps now longer. What the hell? It didn't wobble or fall, but instead went stiff as a board and raised its fifth stump, which I figured out was its neck. So this thing was either staring away from me or directly at me. It was hard to see, but I think it was looking at me. Then an awful thought came to my mind. It couldn't be that deer. It couldn't. The thing and I were just staring at each other, and I seriously hoped that it couldn't see me. Then I realized something. I had the bathroom light on, and I was standing at the window. It could definitely see me. Thoughts of the screaming and hollering from that night played over and over in my mind. Had it followed us home? My body tensed up and refused to breathe. I had gone very much into prey mode, and I was now trying my best to hide myself, which, let's be honest, isn't going to go down well when you're stood under a spotlight. I don't know how long I stayed there. After a while, the thing gave up, and whilst still on its hind legs, it staggered off into the bush behind the house. I cried. I cried so hard. I ended up squeezed into the corner of the bathroom, shaking like a leaf with tears running down my cheeks. I can't remember the last time I cried like that. It must have been when I first moved in with Aaron, and that was a long time ago. After this release of pent-up emotion, I pulled myself together and called Aaron. I gushed, spilling everything to him. I thought we'd lost connection because he was so quiet. He eventually told me he'd be home soon and that I should start to pack a bag. I didn't have any time to respond before he hung up, and I was left baffled. When he came home, he came into our bedroom and started piling clothes into his duffel bag. "Where are we going?" I asked, staring at my boyfriend in surprise. He had never been this serious before. "I'll tell you in the car." He didn't even bother looking away from his bag. "Babe, what's going on?" "Shh." He shushed me sharply. "I'll tell you in the car." I went back to folding my clothes and chucking spare glances at him. His face was completely blank and his hands were working on autopilot. We left the house that evening, as soon as we packed. Is it bad to say that Aaron scared me a little? I had never seen this part of him at all. It was almost like he was angry. We got settled in the car and he pulled out of the driveway. "Are you going to tell me where we're going now?" He stayed quiet and faced the road. "Aaron." I was getting irritated now. He pursed his lips and flicked his eyes over to the rearview mirror. "Aaron, will you answer me?" "Shut up," he hissed, eyes bobbing from the rear view to the windshield and back again. I sat there speechless. That was the first time he had told me to shut up and meant it. There wasn't any venom behind the words, and I didn't know what to make of it. So I did what I'd learned to do when people were pissed off. I stayed quiet and, much to my shame, I disassociated. He was stressed and I was making things harder. I think I must have disassociated for about an hour before I felt Aaron squeezing my shoulder. We were outside a dive bar. I had no idea where we were. "You okay, sweet?" He was rubbing into the meat of my shoulder, face full of concern. About an hour of time lost. I heard him call my name and I woke up from that familiar trance. Where are we? It was the only thing I was thinking about. Let's get inside first, yeah? Something in me just snapped. What was this? No, I bit. You tell me right now, Aaron. He threw his head back against the headrest inside. Can we just get inside, Elle? Aaron, please. I stared right at him. I'm scared. It was rare for me to say that out loud. Aaron knew that. He quickly looked around all the car, peeking in the windows before he turned to me. He beckoned me close to him, and I obeyed. Then he whispered something in my ear. It might still hear us. I had a full-body shiver and made my stomach fill with dread. So, we need other people to block out conversation? I whispered back. He nodded. I understood, even if it sounded bizarre. We grabbed a bite to eat and sat in the middle of the booths, multiple families chatting beside us. Finally, we could talk. That leads me to now. I'm sitting in the car. Aaron's driving. In the span of a week, my life has been turned upside down. Life was good. It was good. I was with the man I loved and away from all the shit in my life. My parents were out of my social circle, and Aaron's family took their place. My life was good. Now we're running back to his hometown. It sounds stupid. However, there are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, home isn't safe anymore. That thing knows where we live. Number two, we could vacate to somewhere far off, but money is not good at the moment, and even then, that thing could follow us. We have no idea where this thing can go. Finally, 3. Aaron told his parents and they believed us, mainly because his dad saw the deer. They know someone who can help us. Hopefully, that makes more sense as to why we've decided to head back. We're going to stay to the highways, no back roads unless we have to. Hopefully, that thing either stays away, or if it follows us, it gets ran over by a truck. It probably wouldn't kill it, but it would slow down. I hope. I'm going to finish this post here. Aaron and I are in the car now, and we're close to the highway. I just hope we get there safely. Wish us luck. And this is the last time we have ever heard from the OP, so hopefully the OP and the OP's husband are alive and safe and away from that monster. I asked my best friend to tell me the scariest thing that had ever happened to him. Written by Sapphire Lion 15. Nate and I were at his parents' cabin in Ontario to celebrate the start of summer. We'd both taken a week off of work and planned a 4-day vacation of nothing but hiking, biking, canoeing, and enjoying a break from our hectic lives in the city. I honestly don't remember much of the vacation itself. It was a lot of fun, sure, but we did so much of the same stuff that it's all sort of a blur. Whenever I think of that trip, the only thing that I can remember is that conversation. Probably because I want so desperately to forget it. We'd finished a simple but tasty dinner of hot dogs and potato chips. We both wanted beers, but we'd blown through what we brought with us. It was raining, with occasional thunderclaps. I thought it was peaceful. We were sitting in front of a roaring fireplace, working through a pot of coffee. It was dark and fairly late, but neither of us felt like going to bed, probably because of the coffee, so we ended up just talking. The first few minutes of our conversation were nothing noteworthy. just small talk. Somehow, I really have no idea how, the conversation turned to some of the weird animals we'd seen during the trip. Nate brought up how, while we'd been hiking the day before, a snake had slithered across the trail, most likely startled by us. I had let out a very unmanly scream and jumped a foot in the air. I chuckled and explained that I was afraid of snakes because when I was 9, my brother's pet boa constrictor escaped its terrarium, made its way out of his bedroom, and ate my pet hamster. My parents got rid of the boa and made my brother apologize to me. But I'd been afraid of the reptiles ever since. I said, without exaggeration, that walking in on that creature swallowing my still kicking hamster was the scariest thing I ever saw. Nate looked sympathetic and handed me a cookie from the package we'd been snacking on. We were silent for a minute, listening to the rain and fire, when I asked the question, "What's the scariest thing that ever happened to you?" Nate seemed to freeze. I wondered for a moment if he hadn't heard me. Then I noticed that his coffee cup was violently shaking. The thankfully lukewarm at that point coffee had spilled all over his hands and onto the blanket in his lap. "Nate?" The sound of my voice brought him back to reality. He sucked in a quick breath and noticed that his hand and blanket were soaked in coffee. He frowned and got up, swearing at the spilled coffee. "I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd, freeze up like that. You don't have to tell me if you don't. No." He was so blunt that it surprised me. He'd gotten rid of the ruined blanket. It was a cheap one anyway. Wiped off his hand and refilled his coffee cup. He came back and sat in his chair facing me. We'd been friends for years, but I'd never seen him look so grave. It's been years since I thought of it. The scariest thing that ever happened to me? As much as I want to, though, I'll never forget it. Do you want to talk about it? No, but I will. I need to. Just remember something for me. I'm not making this up. I couldn't if I tried. This isn't some campfire ghost story that happened to my brother's friend's sister's mailman or anything like this. I'm not making this up, okay? I nodded. Despite his warnings, my interest had tripled. He sighed and took a long sip from his coffee. He turned and faced the fire. He didn't look at me once through the story. I asked questions and he answered every one, but he never turned away from the fire. I was 17 and feeling like I was the king of the world. I just paid for, with my parents' help, a used but nice red pickup truck. One of the prettiest girls in my school was my girlfriend. I had just gotten a letter of acceptance to my dad's alma mater. I thought things couldn't get better. To celebrate, Sabrina, my girlfriend, our friend, AJ, and a lot of our friends threw a party. I don't really remember it, but it's where I first heard about the old Raindrop Inn. The Raindrop Inn? Yeah, it was some old hotel back in the 1920s or 1930s. No one knew the full story, but rumor had it that the town founder had built the hotel for his wife. That it had been her dream to live in a hotel. On the opening night, however, the founder found his wife in their bedroom, fooling around with a bellboy. She screamed when she saw her husband, and apparently she opened the balcony door and committed S-word. The founder never set foot in the hotel again and later sold it to the highest bidder. It was open for another 20 years. During that time, 18 people died in it. Most of them committed S-word via the balcony, just like the founder's wife. A maid who saw one of them jump says that the guest screamed, "Leave me alone," into the bedroom before she committed S-word. When the maid checked, there was no one in the bedroom. What about the other guests? The ones that didn't commit S-word? Only 5 of the dead guests didn't. I don't remember the other 2, but there was a couple that were found tied together in a full bathtub, fully clothed, with a plugged-in TV in there with them. The other was a young boy who just disappeared. His mother told the police that she tucked her son into bed and heard some terrible squealing noise after she shut the door. She described it as a sort of squeal of delight, and it wasn't from her son. She ran back in, and he was gone. No body, no blood, nothing. Apparently, that was the last straw. The owner was sick of bad publicity and closed the place down. I learned all of this the night of that party. I didn't believe it and told the guys that they told a nice ghost story. They got defensive and told me to go see it for myself if I didn't believe them. Then they told me where to find it. Everyone knew that it was just inside the forest behind the high school. I laughed it off and we continued to party. But I kept that story in my mind. The next night, Sabrina was over at my house. We were trying to watch a movie, but my little brother Pete wouldn't leave us alone. He kept saying that it was his turn for the TV, that he was going to tell Mom if we didn't hand over the remote. "Do you have a little brother?" I nodded. "Then you probably know how I felt." I finally threw the remote down on the couch and went onto the porch with Sabrina. We were talking. She was suggesting we go to her house to watch the movie. I forget what exactly we were talking about. Anyway, my mom walks out of the house and tells me that she needs to run out for a few hours. She was a vet, and some asshole, her words not mine, had run over a dog. She told me I was in charge and asked Sabrina if she wanted a ride home. She said no, that we were going to finish our movie. Mom told me she'd be home by 1 a.m., reminded me to watch Pete, and left. I told Sabrina that if Pete was going to be a pain and hog the TV all night, then I didn't really want to stay home. It was a Friday night, not to mention the start of summer. I told her that we should do something exciting, something cool. She asked me what I wanted to do. At that point, it was 8 at night, and a few places were closed. I thought for a second before I remembered the night before. I asked her if she had heard about the Rain Drop Inn. Surprisingly, she hadn't. I told her what the guys had told me the night before. She listened, but asked when I was done why I brought it up. I told her that I wanted to go see it. She laughed at me. Very funny. I told her I was serious. If it was as close as the guys at the party had said, then we could be there and back before my mom got home. She was quiet for a second, then started to look excited. She'd always had a bit of a fascination with urban legends, and I knew that it wouldn't take much convincing to get her to go to the old hotel. But then her face fell again. "You have to watch your brother. Remember? There's no way that he wouldn't tell your mom." I cursed under my breath. She was right. If Pete knew what we were doing, he'd want to come. The kid had read every Goosebumps book twice and loved scary stuff. If he came, he'd ruin the fun. And if we left, he'd tell Mom. Then I had an idea. When I was a kid, my dad got Pete and I into collecting these little Hot Wheels cars. I kept up my collection even in my teens and had about 300 by that night. Pete had less than half of that, and he was seriously jealous of my collection. I'd even caught him in my room once or twice trying to steal the more impressive models. I told Sabrina that I knew what to do and went inside. Pete had turned the TV to one of those kids' channels and got mad when I paused it, but he heard me out. I told him that I would give him 50 of the cars from my collection. His choice, if he didn't tell Mom about Sabrina and I going out for a while. He agreed but asked where we were going. Just some place some friends at school told me about. He seemed suspicious but nodded. He then turned back to the TV and pulled his favorite red baseball cap down to his eyebrows, signaling that the conversation was over. I went up to my room to grab a flashlight and a jacket. When I came downstairs, the TV was off and Pete was gone. I assumed that he'd gone to his room and went back to the porch. Sabrina was annoyed that I'd taken so long, but then smiled and said she wanted to go. I turned towards my truck and was halfway to the driveway when Sabrina told me to turn around. I had left the front door open. I pulled my key from my pocket, shut the door, and locked it. But I was confused. I was sure I'd locked the door on my way out the first time. Hadn't I? I shook it off and went to the car with Sabrina. It was barely 5 minutes from our house to the high school, but we wasted 10 driving around, looking for the old, unkempt road that allegedly led to the raindrop. Finally, I parked my truck and we both got out. I turned on the flashlight and we walked out. Finally, Sabrina spotted it. You wouldn't notice it from a distance, as a lot of grass had grown between the cracks, but there was a lot of really broken asphalt that made a trail leading into the woods. We looked at each other and grinned. We were about to start when I heard a sound like a car door slamming. We both turned to my truck, but there was nothing there. I remembered then that I hadn't locked it, and pressed the button on my key fob. Sabrina, more eager now than ever, grabbed my upper arm and pulled me down the path. We walked for maybe 20 minutes before we found it. We both sort of froze when it came into view. I don't think either of us had completely believed that it was real, but there it was. It looked like it had once been nice. It was 3 stories tall. It must have been really well built if it was still standing after 70 years. 50 of them with no maintenance. Still, the age showed. The building was being strangled by kudzu, with every window being broken or having no glass at all. The original color of the walls was impossible to guess, as the wind, rain, and time had turned them an earthy brown. The roof was missing multiple tiles. There were massive cracks in the walls, and the front porch was sagging. To top it all off, we clearly hadn't been the first people to visit the place. Graffiti, written in neon orange spray paint, had been sprayed on several blank spots on the walls. Keep out, run, stay away, danger. Stuff like that was written whenever the artist could find space. We should have gone home right then and there. I was scared out of my mind, and judging by how tightly she was holding my hand, Sabrina was too. But we still wanted to go in. Maybe I was being stupid that night. Maybe I wanted to look tough in front of my girlfriend. I don't know, but we went in. The hotel was even creepier inside. At first glance, I thought it looked more like an old barn than an old hotel. Then, as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw that, yes, it had been a hotel. There was the front desk, covered in mouse turds. There was the lobby bell, so rusty that it would never ring again. The half-eaten couch, lopsided love seat, and upside-down chair had been the sitting area in the lobby. There was even a luggage cart buried under so many dusty cobwebs that it looked like a sheer white curtain had been draped over it. From holes in the ceiling, moonlight illuminated the room. Well, this is inviting, Sabrina whispered. "You scared?" I whispered back, hoping she would say yes so that we could leave. "No," she responded, still whispering. I knew she was lying. You don't bury your fingernails into someone's shoulder if you're relaxed. "Are you scared?" "No," I lied. "Why are we whispering?" "I don't know," she said, speaking normally. "Do you want to try and go upstairs?" I did not. What I wanted was to get out of there, make a beeline for the truck, go home and wrestle the TV remote from Pete, but I didn't want my girlfriend to think I was a wimp. So I tried to look brave and nodded. The stairs were in surprisingly good shape, considering the state of the rest of the hotel. We had to dodge cobwebs, which hung from the ceiling of the stairwell like party streamers, but we didn't have trouble getting to the next floor. That's when things got really creepy. The first thing we saw when we got to the hotel's second floor was a lump in the middle of the floor. Sabrina glanced at me, and I walked over to the lump. I only took one look before jumping back in disgust. The lump was a rabbit, or it had been. It was dead, and I didn't have to be a doctor to see what had killed it. There was a hole in its chest the size of my fist. From the 2-second glance I took, I could see that the rabbit's organs were all gone. There wasn't even blood. The rabbit was nothing more than literal skin and bones. I did not tell Sabrina this. I just said that the rabbit had been killed by something and that we should probably go. She was clearly freaked out by the rabbit, even if she didn't know how bad it was mutilated. We might have left right then if we hadn't heard something. Footsteps. We both froze and slowly turned to look at the door to the stairwell. Someone was coming up the stairs. I threw open the first door I saw. The lock was so old that it fell off when I opened the door. I sort of hugged Sabrina to me and pulled her into the room. I closed the door as quietly as I could, hoping that whatever was coming up the stairs hadn't hurt us in the hall. We both heard the door to the stairwell open. We looked at each other and both put our fingers over our lips. I've never seen Sabrina's eyes so wide, and I have a feeling mine looked the same. We listened closely as the thing that had walked up the stairs began to walk slowly down the hall. I heard it stop at what must have been the rabbit's corpse. At that point, I realized that I heard a new noise. There were voices coming from the hallway. No, not the hallway. Those voices were coming from all over the floor. I wrapped my arms around Sabrina as we listened. From somewhere there came an inhuman squeal of delight, followed by the scream of a small child. From a bathroom somewhere up the hall, there was begging and screaming, followed by a violent splash and the unmistakable sound of electricity. A woman screamed, "Leave me alone," followed by a window shattering and a distant, heavy thud. My already hammering heart rate accelerated when I realized what I was listening to. I remembered the story from the party, how a child had disappeared, a couple had been electrocuted, a woman had committed S-word. We'd just listened to those people die. Those sounds finally stopped, followed by what sounded like a sharp draw of breath from the hallway. I noticed then that the room was cold, eerily cold, especially for a night in late May, and it was quickly getting colder. Like the source of the chill was moving up the hall. There was a sudden scream. I was so rattled that I screamed. So did Sabrina. At that moment, instincts took over. I forgot about looking cool and just wanted out of there. I grabbed Sabrina's hand and charged through the door like a fullback. It was so old that I actually knocked it off its hinges as I ran. I caught a glimpse of some shapeless white thing. I didn't look any longer than that, and charged for the door to the stairwell. Considering how fast I was running, I'm amazed that neither of us hurt ourselves as he rocketed downstairs. Despite my panic, I noticed something in the lobby I hadn't before. There was a pile in the corner. A pile of limp, furry bodies. They all had holes in them. At that point, I didn't want to see any more. Still holding Sabrina's hand, I sprinted across the lobby, flew out the front door, and tripped on the porch. We both landed face down on the forest floor. I didn't know or care if I was hurt. I immediately got up, clawing at the dirt to get friction. Sabrina was a few steps ahead of me, calling at me to keep running, to not look back. Screams were pouring from the hotel windows. Screams of pain and terror. That was all the incentive I needed to pick up my pace. I ran so fast that night that I think I broke a few Olympic records. The second we saw the truck, we both jumped in. I twisted the key and stomped on the gas. My truck broke the speed limit 3 times over as we made a break for my house. When the school was out of view, I slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. We took a moment to catch our breath. Sabrina was crying. She'd been so scared. Honestly, I was too. Nothing in my life had prepared me for that. I wondered how close we'd come to disappearing or dying that night. We stayed in my truck for a while, trying to get a hold of ourselves and processing what had happened. Finally, we both felt stable enough to go back to my house. At that point, it was midnight, and my mom would be home in an hour. I expected Pete to still be parked in front of the TV, and I remembered that I still needed to give him the cars he wanted. At that moment, I was ready to give him the full collection. After that night, toy cars didn't seem important anymore. Sabrina went in first, while I parked the car. I went in and saw she wasn't there. I heard her upstairs and went to make us a snack. I just pulled out the chips and salsa when I heard her run down the stairs. I turned around with the chip platter, smiling. She must have been hungry. Then I looked at her face. That's when I saw how scared she was. She looked me in the eyes and practically shouted, "Where's your brother?" Tears started streaming down his face. Pete had hidden in the back of my truck. He'd overheard what I said on the porch about the hotel, and he'd gone with us. He opened the front door, he slammed my truck door. He was making the footsteps we heard on the stairs, and he was the one who screamed. I left him there. For a few minutes, he was silent. I sat back, stunned. I didn't know what to say. Finally, he spoke again. A week later, I went back to that hotel. I don't know why, closure maybe. As I drove up, I saw it on the porch. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want it to be there, but it was. Pete's red baseball cap. He took a deep breath and finally looked at me again. And that is the scariest thing that ever happened to me. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The fire was still blazing, and the rain was still hammering down. But it wasn't peaceful anymore. My smart home says my door opened at 2:15 a.m., written by Hokons. I didn't always live alone. After Paul and I separated, I kept the house. A modest 4-bedroom, mortgage paid off. 3 months on and half his furniture was still piled in the living room, waiting for him to collect. How many times do I have to tell you? He'd yell over the phone, "I'll be back, you can count on that. And God help me if there's so much as a scratch." I changed the locks the next morning. There was a lot I didn't know about Paul. This was the first time I'd truly lived alone. No Paul, no flatmate, just me and 3 empty bedrooms. Even in a gated neighborhood, break-ins happened. I'd chewed my nails down to stubs over it. I researched smart home technology. If I was doing this, I was going all the way. Smart bulbs, door sensors, automated security. I found a service that met all my needs and ordered with express delivery. It was all tied to one app that logged everything. Every light switched on, every door opened, logged. There was a shortage of security cameras. The packages would arrive within 4 to 6 weeks, they said. That was 2 months ago. I'd have emailed the courier for an update, but I forgot all about it once I started skimming the logs. I'd been having a problem. Lights would switch on in random rooms. The manual warned it might, but this was consistent. Daily. I'd be eating a salad in the living room and the gap under the laundry door would light up. The laundry leads to a back door. A rat, possibly. Something had gotten in and was triggering the sensors. Then it started happening more often. The laundry, the garage, even the living room while I was cooking in the kitchen. I opened the app to check the logs. Bedroom door. Opened. 2:14 a.m. I stared at it for a long time. My bedroom was an ensuite. I don't leave the room at night. Bedroom door. Closed. 5:58 a.m. Just before my alarm goes off. False positives. That's all they were. Same as the lights. I locked the bedroom door and called my lawyer, Greg Duggins. Are you sure he's still in San Francisco? I asked. Yes, positive, said Duggins. He'll be in the States for another week. Okay, I said, if you say so. I set the phone down on the bedside table and looked at the door. San Francisco. Right. I turned the handle once to make sure it was locked. I returned to the app and scrolled further down the logs. Laundry door, open, 11 p.m. Laundry light, 11:01 p.m. Entryway light, 11:03 p.m. Hallway light, 11:03 p.m. Second floor hallway light, 11:04 p.m. From then until my bedroom door opened at 2:14 a.m., nothing. I called the cops to report a break-in. While I waited, I kept looking at the timeline. What were they doing on the landing all that time? None of the rooms had their lights triggered. The only place to hide was the linen closet, but there was no space for anything other than a small critter. A rat, like I thought. I chewed my lip and opened the bedroom door. The linen closet was within an arm's reach. I reached for the handle. Knock, knock, knock. Jesus. I let go of the handle and rushed downstairs to let the police in. Afternoon, ma'am. We're responding to a call for a break-in. Yes, come in. I showed them the logs. They agreed it was strange. Just me. New locks, I said. Well, there's no sign of forced entry, but there are a few scratch marks around the keyhole. If you've got a new lock, it's not uncommon to scratch the keyhole while your muscle memory adjusts. But it's possible someone broke in, right? Well, the door was locked from the inside when we got here, so I doubt it, he said, chewing at his overgrown mustache. Show us the rooms and we'll have a look over. Ease your mind. I showed them all the rooms on the first floor and the bedrooms on the second floor. There wasn't much for them to do. They noted the break-in and advised me to follow up on getting those cameras installed. I dusted Paul's junk and made dinner. I didn't eat much, just poked at my food, scrolling through my contacts. I had 4 friends who would pack an overnight bag and be here within an hour, but I hadn't spoken with any of them since the divorce. They'd bring up Paul, and all I wanted to was to forget about him and all his shit he kept promising to pick up. I locked up and went to bed. After an hour of flipping my pillow to the cool side, I gave up and checked the logs. No new alerts. Part of me wished I had never installed the app. I would have been sound asleep by now. To calm myself down, I opened Google and started browsing apartments in my area. Units, suites, something with a lobby and a night guard. Light flashed under my bedroom door. A notification blipped on my phone. Second floor hallway light. 10:58 p.m. I gripped the bed sheets. Hello? The light switched off. For a second, I thought I'd seen two shadows, spaced about a shoe length apart. I refreshed the page. No new logs. No other lights triggered. I got out of bed and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. I used the app to turn on the hallway lights and looked under the gap. The shadows were gone. No one is there, I told myself. If someone were there, they'd be in the hallway. I'd see their feet, or they'd have gone to another room, which would have triggered the light. The only other area on the second floor was the linen closet, in arm's reach from my door. Did I ever check it? I gripped the bedroom door handle. Open, reach, grab, open. I cracked open the bedroom door. Bzzzt. Fuck. I slammed it shut. Bedroom door opened 11:05 p.m. Idiot. I opened the bedroom door and peered through the crack. Floorboards, wall, no shadows. I opened it further, looking at the linen closet. Grab open, that's all. Then I can go to bed. I gripped the handle. I've got a gun, and I will shoot. I lied. No answer. I'd been hoping there would be one, then I wouldn't have to open the door. All right, it's your funeral. I ripped open the closet door. Sheets, blankets, a vacuum cleaner. A gap next to the vacuum that hadn't been there before. I looked closer. Something wet pooled in the corner. I sniffed the air. Ammonia. Urine. Light beamed up the staircase. Hallway light, 11:07 p.m. A shadow moved down it. Quick steps echoed off the walls. Entryway light, 11:07 p.m. Laundry light, 11:08 p.m. Laundry door open, 11:08 p.m. My heart was in my throat. I moved toward the noise, as if I'd convinced myself I really did have a gun. I stopped at the landing. Hey, I saw you. I went down. All the lights were still on. Paul's furniture cast long shadows across the living room. The shade on his lamp turned slowly. Both laundry doors were open. I could see through to the side yard. They'd left. I stood in the laundry doorway and looked out at the side yard. My phone burned in my hand. I'd been squeezing it. No way of knowing who was in my home. I moved to close the door. The smell hit me again. Stronger. I looked back towards the stairs to the linen closet, right outside my bedroom. I hadn't checked it earlier. I had my hand on the handle. I thought about the hours where nothing had triggered. The time I spent lying in bed. The time they spent crouched in the linen closet, right outside my door. Listening. Waiting for me to go to sleep. I paralyzed my little brother while pulling a prank. When I was 11 and my younger brother was 9, I passed to the dark side. We used to regularly prank each other and the rest of our family. Most of the time it was harmless, like removing the light bulb from a closet and then jumping out to scare the person who came inside. We had a pretty good one where we would take all of the chocolate chip cookies out of the container and switch them with oatmeal raisin. Haha. There was one instance though that I crossed the line. I had just seen Home Alone and I had loved the idea of having this really extensive and detailed plans for a trap. I spent a week or two trying to come up with my own crazy plans, most of which were impossible because they involved some sort of catapult. But I did come up with one that I thought was ingenious, and I wanted to use it on my little brother. So while my brother was outside playing, I decided to set my trap. It started with me pouring shampoo and some water in a bucket. Then I took a whole bunch of glue and feathers and poured them all over the shower curtain in the bathroom. I removed the light bulb in the bathroom. Then I took the bucket of shampoo water and dumped it on the floor. My plan was to have my brother come into the bathroom, slip across the floor, and then either fall onto or grab the shower curtain for support. He would then be stuck to the shower curtain and be stuck with a feather cape. It was really stupid, and I was an idiot. Well, it worked. He came into the bathroom, slid across the floor, and hit it into the shower curtain. Only he didn't stop slipping. He slipped and hit the base of his neck on the edge of the bathtub. I don't remember much immediately after that. I think I blacked out. That was 15 years ago. My brother still can't walk. He's stuck in a wheelchair. He has almost no movement from the neck down. He can barely talk, and it is a struggle to get out one or two words. For me, the worst part is that he can still control his facial expressions pretty well. I apologize to him every day for years. I still do it fairly often now. He always has this look. He smiles and says, "It's okay." He smiles with his mouth, but not his eyes. I've seen him smile for real, but I can see the resentment in his eyes. I'm the worst person alive. I'm an idiot. My girlfriend committed S-word after I cheated on her. I then proceeded to tell her family and all of her friends that she had cheated on me. This happened 2 years ago. Basically, she was an angel, and I was a terrible boyfriend who took her for granted. She was too good to me, and for some reason, it made me resent her. I wanted to hurt her. So I brought a random girl into her apartment while she was at work. I had the key and she had given me permission to go in at any time, and made sure she caught me having intimacy with her when she came in. Of course, I made it seem like it was all her fault for not appreciating me. We were both in our mid-20s, and I thought this was just what I was supposed to do as a man. I thought that, as men, we all had an unspoken agreement is that we exist to torture women and pretend it doesn't happen. Anyway, I called her a worthless B-word and dumped her. 3 days later, she committed S-word. I told all of our family and friends that I had caught her in my bed/apartment with another guy, and that she freaked out when I wouldn't take her back. I turned the whole story around. The worst thing is that everyone believed it, as I knew they would. This only furthered my belief about women being inferior and existing to suffer. People always blame women for everything, even when it's clearly not their fault. Lately, I've been feeling guilty, and I don't know why. She's dead and gone, but she was really a good girl. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone said, "Wow, I'm kind of hoping that the reason you're beginning to feel bad about the situation is that you have taken a long, hard look at yourself and don't like what you see. If this is the case, then there's a slim chance of you growing as a human being and becoming a real man. At the moment, you're a liar, cheat, and a condescending bully. Maybe you're transferring your thoughts about yourself into women. Have you thought about therapy? It might help and in turn allow you to have an adult relationship in the future. I wish you well on your journey. Another person says, they believe you because it's a believable story that people cheat. They believe you because you are one still here to tell the truth, unlike your girlfriend. She put enough faith in you that it literally destroyed her world when she saw the real you. I just wish all those around you could see you for the sociopathic, misogynistic wolf in sheep's clothing you are. Then maybe you'd change. She was a good girl and you are/were a bad person. You feel guilty, if you even do, because you were in fact guilty of some vile things. Truly admit to yourself your actions, realize the impact, become a better person than you are. You owe her that much at least. And another person says, you should be the one who's dead. Some soul even slightly better than you is worth living. Remember this till the day you die. You don't deserve to live. You don't deserve happiness. Even death won't free you.
And do you know what's scarier than some of these Reddit threads? Not having some extra cash on hand. You know, finding an extra money for gaming, shopping, or even travel can just be tough. But what if I told you there's an easy way to earn money just by playing games? That brings us to today's sponsor, FreeCash. FreeCash is an online platform where you can make money simply by playing mobile games. It's completely free to sign up and has a 4.7-star rating on Trustpilot, so it's a legit and trusted platform. Take a look at the interface. You can see all the different games available. This time I downloaded Monopoly Go because everyone is playing it right now. And just by rolling the dice and building up my boards in my spare time, I've already made money. Just make sure your app tracking is enabled so FreeCash can reward you properly. You can play while watching TV, commuting, or just relaxing and watching one of my videos. I even made a small in-game purchase in Monopoly Go to get extra dice rolls and speed up my progress. And FreeCash gave me cashback rewards for it, so, good deal. When you're ready, you can withdraw your earnings instantly. I'm cashing out via PayPal, but they have other options like crypto, gift cards, and more. Don't miss out. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or click the link over at signupfreecash.com/snook to get a $10 bonus on your first offer. Keep in mind, your interface might look a little different depending on where you live, but the functionality is exactly the same. Go to signupfreecash.com/snook or scan that QR code and start earning today.
And now, let's get back into it. And this next confession is from a Ask Reddit question. And the original Ask Reddit question was, people of Reddit, have you ever killed anyone? If so, what were the circumstances? And one commenter says, throwaway for obvious reasons. When I was 12, I was babysitting for a family in my subdivision. There were 2 little girls and a baby. I had experience babysitting, but wasn't great with babies. I was real nervous and not the most responsible/adult kid anyway. The kids were sitting on the living room floor reading, and the baby started crying from her crib. I picked her up and took her into the kitchen to warm up her milk bottle in the microwave. I simply dropped her. I've been over this 1,000 times in my head, and there is no other way I can explain it. I dropped her, and her head hit the tile floor. She was very clearly dead immediately. The weirdest part is how calm I felt. Like I turned into a robot. I told the girls to go to the basement immediately and called my dad and told him what happened. Then I sat at the kitchen table for 10 minutes while he came over. He drove the girls to our house to be with my mom, then drove me and the body to the hospital. Obviously, nothing could be done. I was not charged because it was ruled an accidental death. There was a chance I could have been charged with criminally negligent manslaughter, but was not, in part because of my age. This was several decades ago, and I still feel it every day. I am a woman, and do not think I can ever have children because of it. The family moved, but until they did, I had to throw up every time I drove past their house or saw one of them in the community. And now let's get into some of the relevant comments. Someone says, "Holy shit, what was the family's reaction?" And the OP replies and says, "I did not have to deal with this much. My dad called them from the hospital. It was the middle of the afternoon and they were both at work. This was over the summer and both my parents were teachers. I know that it was not a good experience for him, but we have never really talked about it. My mom came and picked me up from the hospital, and my dad stayed while they came over. I will never be able to repay him for doing that. I think he thought I was 12 and it would not help to see the parents in hysterics. I saw them at the wake and funeral about a week after it happened. We were a middle-sized suburb, so people knew that it happened while I was sitting. But to the parents' credit, they never said anything nasty about me, or at least I never heard anything like that. It was considered a tragedy in our community, and some kids at school called me baby killer and other real original stuff. But most people were sensitive enough to not say anything or just give me a hug/pity eyes. At the wake, the mom came up to me and hugged me and told me that she didn't blame me. That was pretty much the only time we spoke about it. They moved about a year and a half after it happened. And this next one is very, very disturbing. So viewer discretion is advised, and just trigger warning, this one is graphic. Let's get into it. I am an active predator. Before the morality police jump on me, I'll point out that this is the Confessions subreddit, and that I'm posting because I normally have to keep this a secret, and I felt like it'd just be liberating to just say openly what I'm into and what I do. And if you want to be R-word and judgmental, you can just go F off. I know that my preferences and actions aren't consistent with traditional morality, but of course that's all relative to culture. And it's just been my bad luck to live in a time and place where my preferences are considered taboo. So, I'm an active predator, which means that I regularly have intimacy with minors. My preference is between single digits and low teen years. And also, just another disclaimer, I will be censoring a lot. I am not getting into everything he said because truly, this is one of the worst confessions I have ever read, and it is just disgusting. I will not read everything. I will censor a lot of it, but I'll just get into the gist of it. But let's continue. Professionally, I am a minor psychologist. I have 2 PhDs, and I work part-time as an adjunct at a major research university. Obviously, it's part of my job to understand how minors think, and my work has put me in contact with hundreds of minors over the years. I have only had intimacy with a small percentage of them, those whom I can be responsibly confident won't tell anyone, and whom I believe may enjoy the experience. And I'm going to skip a little bit, and he says, in general, I don't care whether my actions will harm the minor when I choose to get intimate with him or her. I have 2 daughters, both aged very young. I have never violated the older one, who's still a teenager. Their mother, my wife, died from breast cancer 3 years ago. The older one goes to a boarding school in Michigan where she studies flute. I have been having regular intimacy with the younger one since she was single digits. I don't necessarily prefer boys or girls. Both are attractive to me. I've always been attracted to minors since I myself was a minor. I guess as I grew older, I never stopped finding people of that particular age range desirable. I suppose I generally prefer consensual intimacy, although I also find forced scenarios also intriguing. I don't keep a tally, but I'd estimate that I've had some form of contact with 50 to 60 minors. And then he gets into graphic detail of the amount he's had full intimacy with, etc. I can't even say this, it's so gross. He says, I would classify 5 of those encounters as R-word, but the vast majority were in the gray area of consent. I suppose something that some readers may find interesting is that I have met several other predators who have similar preferences to mine. I suppose that many of you would be surprised about several things that I have learned in my interactions with other predators. First, about how many secret predators there are, how exceedingly common this preference is. And I'm not even going to read the second and third reason. And he says how easy it is to get away with it in a society that basically treats predators like witches. If anyone wants to ask me details, note, I will not stupidly reveal any identifying information, so don't bother trying to trick me into giving up my address. Then feel free to DM me, and I'd be happy to answer questions. And the OP's profile was shortly taken down after his post, but let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, this is one of those things you hope is a troll. If it's then, OP needs to die in a fire. I can't even begin to describe how sociopathic this whole thing reads. I was never abused. I had other shit, but not intimately. My stuff messed me up enough as it was. I can't even imagine what this could have done to the victims. And a lot of the other comments are just people also saying they're predators, and I think it's other people actually confessing to being a predator. It's horrific. It's disgusting. And this is what I say in every single video I've included a predator confession. Like, there's so many predators out there. It's horrifying. Like, you guys truly need to be careful who you talk to on the internet, because you never know who they might be or what their intentions might be. And you just, if you're a parent or if you're a minor yourself, just be super careful about what your own kid is looking at on the internet, who they talking to, what websites are they using? Because, these people are everywhere, and it's disgusting. And that's why I usually like to include a predator confession, because then it just drives home the fact that there's so many out there, and you just need to be careful. Whether it's your little brother, little sister, your cousin, just please be checking on what they're doing online, because the internet is a dangerous place, and there is so many vile human beings on the internet. So yeah, just guys, stay safe, please. And all of these people need to rot in prison for the rest of their life. God, just beyond disgusting. Need advice on inheritance, arbitrage, family, etc. Please, I am becoming desperate. The Bitcoin boom has been wonderful for some people, obviously, but I am really struggling. Last year, my father passed away. My mother passed away from cancer many years ago. And my sister and I were left with a large inheritance. I am 23, and my sister is only 17. Parents had us when they were somewhat older. The inheritance was placed entirely in my control to be split between my sister and I. He did not want her to have access to the money until she turned 21. I am tasked with assisting her with college payments, etc. I chose to liquidate the majority of the assets and was left with around $750,000. I'm bitter about this because I was ripped off by a shifty individual taking advantage of my ignorance on some things. I should have gotten much more than I did. Well, I discovered Bitcoin a few years ago. I today greatly regret that the moment I liquidated the inheritance, I didn't place the entirety of it into Bitcoin. With Bitcoin on the verge of making it very, very big, I began performing arbitrage 6 months ago. The rising adoption has created volatility, which makes it very good for arbitrage. And for those of you who don't know what arbitrage is, it's basically just an investment or trading strategy for Bitcoin, or I guess stocks in general. But let's continue. I know of people that have made a lot of money doing this, but I have now lost a lot of money. I am consistently misjudging the movement of the markets. I buy in and sell, not holding any long-term positions. On the 19th, I bought 250 coins at $800. It was quickly rising, and I was worried I would not be able to buy in at that price ever again. Immediately after my purchase again, it began tanking. I tried to hold my position hoping it was just temporary and would return to $800 and increase from there. After hitting around $600, it began to increase again. I viewed this as reaffirming my projection. It rose again to around $700. I held my position into the 20th. It dropped to $500, and that was my sell point, hoping to minimize my losses. I lost $75,000 in an almost 24-hour period. This was my fastest and almost largest single trade loss. If I'd continued to hold, I would be able to sell right now with minimal losses. I have made money on trades, but overall the losses have kept me in the red. As of today, over the past 7 months, I have lost a total of $410,000. The inheritance was supposed to be split between my younger sister and I, giving us each $375,000 plus half of the house. Not worth much, rural area, etc. However, I don't have a legal obligation to provide her with half of the money. That was a verbal contract between my father and I. The in-writing legal stuff allocates it all to me. I made the mistake of telling her that I invested the money into Bitcoin. She has read the news, etc. on it, so she is under the assumption that there is a lot more money than there actually is. Regardless, I've already paid her first year of college tuition in cash anyway. This was around $30,000. I also bought her a used car to take to college, $5,000. We later found out they don't want freshmen to have cars, so we might sell it and I can give her that money. Ultimately, in addition to other living expenses, bills, car, etc., I have around $280,000 left, which is currently all liquid. Now, if you took the time to read all of that, thank you. I'm sorry it was so long. What I am looking for is advice on how to trade. How can I guarantee that I earn high returns? What are good resources on how to trade Bitcoin? Are there any good books? Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read the rest, but he's basically just asking for help. I know I can earn this money back. I just need to figure out how. Is there any experienced traders out there that is in need for funding? I'm willing to work out a deal where we can work together on this. I need to see a proven track record of success though. Thanks for your time. I know a lot of people are going to respond negatively to me. I know I fucked up. I really, really need advice though, so please don't downvote me just because I'm an idiot. And by the way, this post has 0 upvotes and a staggering 643 comments. And let's get into some of them. Someone says, the financial instrument is irrelevant here. You have a gambling problem and need a psychologist. And the OP says, I didn't and don't really consider what I am doing to be gambling. I am investing / day trading. It isn't like I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on scratch-off tickets. I was just unlucky in some of my trades. I'm not looking for magic bullet advice. I'm looking for proven strategies that have been shown to work. I know there are no guarantees. I really need to make this money back though. I have decided that if I get down to $150,000 that I will stop. Oh no. So I basically have $130,000 left to invest. I know it won't come down to that though. By stopping there, my sister and I can split $75,000 and be able to survive for a while since we don't have any parental assistance any longer. That will help her pay for another 2 years of school. She'll only have to acquire a little bit of debt to finish then. And oh my God, the OP has lost nearly $500,000 and he doesn't think he's gambling. Oh my God, this is really tragic. The sister is losing all of her inheritance. And the poor parents that put all of their trust into the OP here to take care of him and his sister. And he just fucked it all up. And someone says, give the entire $280,000 to your sister. You were supposed to be the responsible one. And someone else says, the money is gone. Be a big boy, tell her what happened, and give her the rest. You made a deal with your dad. Now honor your end of the bargain as best as you can. And someone else says, man, I feel terrible for your sister. Please keep us updated as you piss away the rest of her inheritance. And someone else says, sorry to hear the loss of your parents at such a young age. You've been landed with heavy responsibilities and you are acknowledging you failed. I can't say I know much about trading, but it sounds like you have a gambling problem. Trading your way out does not sound like a good idea. You say, I know I can earn this money back, but you do not know that. You only hope it. You seem to acknowledge that it was your father's wish that your sister receive half the money. Can you really live with yourself if you go back on that? How much more of your sister's money will you risk before stopping? You have lost your part of the money, and some of hers too. By what you have said, it seems like you owe her $50,000 plus the remaining $280,000. If you want to be fair, I think you should own up to your sister. Let her decide what to do with it, where to invest it. She may be pretty pissed off with you, but you never really know what might happen. Your sister has lost her mother and her father. Do you really want her to lose her brother and her inheritance? Do the difficult thing, the fair thing. Talk to her. And many people say things such as, you are a scumbag, or you effing piece of shit. And a lot of people really feel that way, and I can't blame them. I agree. This OP went against his father's word, and now his sister doesn't have her inheritance, and he doesn't have his inheritance either. He wasted it basically gambling. And from how the OP is responding in these comments, it doesn't really look like he was going to stop. This was the last official post on the OP's profile, and so we don't know what ended up happening. Although in a few other threads, I did see that people are speculating that he lost all the money and he only got $15,000 from the house. And so I don't know if that's verified. I don't know if that's true, but some people have said the OP came back on a different profile. I can't find it. And he posted that he lost everything, which how he's acting here in the comments, it doesn't seem that far off. The OP says, oh, he's confident he's going to make it back and he's going to make it all back. But, you know, he really is just gambling. I mean, he lost $500,000 in 7 months. That's horrifying. And that was supposed to pay for his sister's education. And more likely than not, he ripped apart the remaining relationship with his sister. I mean, imagine finding out that your brother lost your entire inheritance from your father because he basically gambled it away. That was supposed to pay for your education and to set you up for a good life. And also, I just find it insane in the first place that the OP felt the need to have to day trade with this money. Like, was $750,000 not enough money? Like, that's life-changing money for anybody. And for whatever reason, he decided that wasn't enough and he needed more. I mean, truly, the OP here is just a greedy dirtbag who lost his entire inheritance, or allegedly his entire inheritance, because that's what people were saying. But, I mean, he lost more than half of it, so it's just horrible. It really is horrible, and this is just super, super depressing because, yeah, like I said, from the other people speculating in threads, he lost all of it, and he sold the house for only $15,000 because he had to pay back some money, and he was left with basically nothing. I don't know if that's true, but like I said, I kind of believe it. And everybody in this post was saying, please give your money to your sister, or give the remaining inheritance to your sister. But I mean, it doesn't seem like he did. And yeah, this was a really depressing thread. And I'm sure he ripped apart the relationship with his sister. And I wonder where he is today. I was in prison for 7 years. I saw a man die there horribly. I was a really, really shitty person once upon a time. I was driving drunk at 22 and hit someone and killed them. I served 7 years for manslaughter. I'm not proud of it, and it's my greatest shame in my life. I try to just live each day a little bit better than before, and live in such a way that I make amends for the life I took. In prison, I tried to take advantage of a lot of the programs there. I learned how to be an electrician, but it wasn't a great place. I was in Max for the first 2, but I got moved there due to good behavior. That maximum security prison was the most terrifying place I've ever been. Most of the guys are serving 10+ year sentences for super violent shit and know they're gonna die there, so they got nothing to lose. I was put there because I killed someone, and the minimum security prison was full at the time. I survived by just keeping my head down and minding my own business. If I saw something going down, I kept my mouth shut. I managed to get assigned to laundry duty, which was one of the best jobs. I was carrying a full load of dirty shit one day, about a year in, when I came into the laundry room and saw a group of guys holding a guy down and stabbing them over and over. Unfortunately, they heard me, and their leader turned to me and looked at me while holding the knife in his hand. He calmly said, "What do you see here?" I looked around and said, "Nothing but laundry." He walked right up to me, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You see anything else?" I said, "No, sir. Nothing at all." He nodded and said, "You should go then." I turned on my heel and walked out while that dude was lying there bleeding out and gurgling. Obviously, the guards asked me about it since I was working, and that guy was found dead in my work area just outside the camera range. I told them I didn't see anything. They offered to make petitions to get me time off my sentence or even get me out of Max. I didn't budge. I told them I didn't see nothing or know nothing. I knew that they wouldn't move me soon enough, and if I was found out as a rat, they'd probably do worse to me. They were pissed because they knew I had to know something, but thankfully, they didn't punish me. Thankfully, I got transferred to minimum security the next year due to good behavior, and Max was getting crowded. Things were a lot more chill there, but I never told anyone about what I saw that day. Eventually, I got out and got a job and started getting my life back on track again. I'm doing better now, but that shit is definitely still with me, but I'm more haunted by the man I killed. I joined AA and go every week, and just got my 5-year chip, and I've been seeing a counselor a lot. I don't think I can ever make amends, but I'm trying to put good out there now. I am a convicted predator, and this is what I want the public to understand. A common misconception about predators is that they are all heartless, violent R-wordists. If there was an organization that could send public messages anonymously to try and raise awareness about the truth about many predators, what would you like to say from a personal perspective? Here's what I would like to say. I'm a predator. But I didn't ask to be this way. I just am. I don't have a cold heart and I'm not motivated to intentionally cause any harm to anyone. I am as nice and empathetic as anyone, but sometimes get strong desires to do bad things. Due to the judgment, hate, and misconceptions about all of us, I feel very isolated in this world and that nobody can help and support me. This makes me feel very depressed and more likely to get into worse situations. If I were not so discriminated, I might feel more motivated to deal with my problems as best as I can. Sadly, there is not enough help for us kind of people, or anywhere near enough research into this kind of problem. If there was safe help, even for people without convictions, much like there is for those with drug addictions, I feel this kind of problem could be made better for many. Although, let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, "You say you don't have a cold heart or intentionally want to hurt anyone, yet you've acted on these urges. While you may truly believe your own bullshit, you know exactly what this does to young minors emotionally, mentally, and physically. This would be different and easier to believe had you not acted on your urges, but you did, and as the victim of a predator, I would just like to say, fuck you." And someone else says, "You idiot, you are convicted. That says you did horrible things. Go rot in hell, MFer." Killed someone, told nobody. Throwaway account for obvious reasons, and I'm pretty drunk right now, so please take that into account. Luckily, there is an autocorrect on the Reddit website, so I won't look like a total idiot, except for what I'm about to describe. I've actually told 2 people what has happened. The first person was a pastor from a church I don't frequently go to, and the other was a chaplain who does reach outs to civilians from one of the military facilities I work near. Not going to mention which. But I've never actually told this to anyone else, and I feel empty and want outside input. Not just someone who will tell me everything is going to be okay, and that I was acting in self-preservation, blah, 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 blah. I want obvious input, and so I kind of want to reach out here for some of that. This happened a few months back, and if you look into the police reports, I don't even know how you do that. You'll have, hopefully, a hard time figuring out when and who it was. I went out one of the mornings I was off work to grab some beer from the local brewery. They make amazing amber lagers, and I was having a good time of it that day. It was around 10:30 a.m., and when I left, I saw this weird dude talking on his cell phone in the Jeep, looking at me like I didn't have pants on or something. Anyways, I left and thought it was weird. I get back to my apartment complex like 20 minutes later, beer in tow, and this guy was at my front door. He didn't seem to be paying attention to me, and as I approached, I could see he was trying to break in. He had this metal shank looking thing and was punching my doorknob with it. Anyways, whatever he was doing was not normal, and I freaked out. I walked up and grabbed him by his shirt collar and pulled him hard from the door because I literally did not know what else to do. I should have called the cops, I know, and I look back on that situation now thinking about what I could have done differently almost every day it seems. My door is 2 stairs up from the concrete walkway, and when I pulled him, he lost his balance and I basically ended up throwing him to the ground. His head hit the concrete and he fell unconscious. Or at the time, what I thought was unconscious at least. I freaked out and went inside. I sat in my chair in the living room, freaking out about what happened. I didn't really know what was going on, and for some reason, I kept thinking about how weird it was my beer was on the ground outside and was gonna get warm. I have no idea why that was my main focus, but it kept coming back to my mind over and over and over again. Anyways, about a half later, I went outside my door, and since nobody else was around, I grabbed my beer and drove away to escape the situation. I honestly thought that guy would wake up and leave, and it would never be an issue. When I drove away, I could see there was some blood on the ground, but I didn't look too closely. He was still laying there though. I came back several hours later, and when he was still there, I called the police. They sent out an ambulance and like 4 cops showed up. I gave them a report and someone, I don't remember who, I wasn't paying attention, took the body away. To this day, I don't know how to feel about it. I can't help but feeling like I'm a monster for not telling people, but I was also trying to protect myself and my wife. I've not even told her about it, and she was in the basement the whole time playing games or something. What should I do? Who do I talk to about this? Should I turn myself in? Is it already too late? And let's get into the top comments. Someone says, he obviously had intent to do harm. You're in no fault, dude. Don't beat yourself up about it. You didn't have the intention of killing him. He brought it upon himself. And the OP replies and says, I appreciate the sentiments and I understand rationally, but it doesn't make me feel that much better, to be honest. And someone else says, turn yourself in. The only reason that would make sense is if you lied to the police initially, because they would have already charged you with murder, or at the very least manslaughter. If you told them the truth and they haven't charged you, you're legally in the clear. I'm 24 and facing life in prison. It has been almost 9 months now since I got arrested on the charge I'm currently out on $1 million bond for. On February 28th, I was charged with first-degree assault, burglary, kidnapping, all Class A felonies, 2 counts of armed criminal action, unclassified 3 to 99 years, and unlawful possession of a firearm, Class C. I am a twice convicted felon, so all of my felonies were enhanced. In Missouri, we have what's called prior and persistent offenders, our version of the 3 strikes law. On the 30th of April, I found a bondsman who would take 40 grand, or 4% of my bond, though I was actually initially released on just 1.5%, or $15,000. I've been on 24/7 house arrest since then, with my next court date being in January. No sign of when this will be wrapped up yet, and to be honest, I kind of like it that way. They have me totally locked down, and I can't even work. The only case in which I can leave the house are either medical or to see my lawyer, which with the pandemic going on, obviously I can't really take up either of those options either. I'm not complaining at all. Not mad at the system, not feeling the least bit vindictive for that matter. I've had plenty of time to make peace with myself and those close to me. Honestly, I'm just bored. Lonely. I don't really have any friends anymore. Everyone I associated with was a lowlife and I can't do it anymore. I am 9 months clean and turned 24 on the 13th of this month. If anybody has any questions or advice for me, it would mean a lot. It would be nice to be able to get some of this off my chest. Thank you in advance for your interest if you care to engage. Hit me with anything. I've heard it all. I can take criticism. And let's get into the top comments. Someone says, so what's the story? And the OP says, I'm accused of firing rounds at an individual in an attempted armed robbery / burglary. There were 2 other people involved. Let's just say, it didn't go like they're saying. I don't really even remember the day all too well. I know I was far too drunk to do what they're saying I did. Hell, I was asleep when the cops surrounded my car and arrested me, pulled me out, and beat the shit out of me. Another user says, I would just find a way to leave the country and start a new life somewhere. Find somewhere remote and take on a new identity and call it a life. And the OP responds and says, I could. I honestly really could. The problem is, for one, I'm broke. And also you gotta understand we're talking about a $1 million bond here. I may have paid the bondsman to personally get me out of jail, but if I run and flee, my cosigner has to pay the $1 million. It's tempting, but ultimately, I couldn't do that to my mom and dad. And also, I want to spend as much time with them as possible. My grandma as well. She's 90 and is sick. But thankfully, she's beating it like a champ. This moment of lockdown is a time to reflect and try to establish myself as a respectable individual too. And someone else says, if you did what you're charged with plus prior felonies, to be honest, you deserve it. If you didn't, then I'd do whatever I can to get out of the country if I were convicted, but still had to go to the prison myself. Anything is better than life in US prison. And the OP responds and says, it's hard to get across to people how much charges change and how they are always trumped up at the beginning. They grasp for straws. You know what the kidnapping was? My female codependent on this case told the police that I was planning on tying the victims up in the closet. Literally hearsay, and no one was kidnapped. It wasn't even talked about. In fact, I didn't even know where I was. I was so drunk and effed up, I to this day can't identify the faces of any of the victims. I believe that's because I never even saw a thing. Occam's razor tells me I was asleep, considering I was completely uncoordinated. The kid with me was driving the car and holding onto my grandpa's pistol, the one used in the shooting. The shooting, by the way, the assault charge, somebody fired 3 rounds into the bottom of the glass door, apparently because he said they owed him money. Silly. The bullets were from a .25 and didn't even penetrate through the second layer of glass. No excuse for my behavior. Nobody was hurt, thank God. Does that excuse me being there? Having a weapon of my family's in the car, not for robberies? No, absolutely not. I should have been at home, resting, not accompanying someone to some shit I wasn't even aware of. Stupid. Plus, those kids were terrorized, possibly traumatized. That is something I will have to live with for the rest of my life, whether I did anything or not. Thank you for the comment. God bless. And someone else says, I've been arrested and gone to prison. They will charge you with everything you did, but only convict you of a couple charges if you take the plea deal. Previous felony convictions don't give you enhancements. Now, if they were for the same charges or you went to prison, you were already convicted of them, yeah, you get the enhancement if you went to prison. But since you had a firearm as a felon, then you will do a minimum of 10 years, and they will most likely be giving you at least 1 strike since there was an assault and kidnapping, since you had the gun during the crimes. Gun charge will most likely stand, and so will the kidnapping and assault. They may or may not drop the armed criminal action and burglary. If a strike, you will get at least 20 years at 85%, first strike. Then 90% second strike, and 100% third strike with a minimum of 25 to life. It all demands on your past and how bad the crimes were. But from my experience, there will be at least a sentence of 20 years if no strike. You will serve 5 if you keep your good time credits. If you run, you will get the maximum plus of 5 years. And it seems like the OP, what he said in his previous post about a lot of them won't stick, reigned true, because he kept posting on and off the next few years, although it didn't look so hot. He made a few posts about talking about drugs and saying how he was struggling with drug addiction, and one of his last posts on his profile says, I just tried C drug for the first time, and wow. And I'm just going to read the first sentence, but it says, so following a 6-day long binge of crystal and highly pure booger sugar, I somehow found myself with a C head in my car. And he gets into it, but it looks like he's gone downhill ever since this post of him facing life in prison. And so what I assume happened is the charges he was charged with just didn't stick, because like he said, he didn't probably do anything. He was just with someone. And so most likely he got just dropped and he didn't have any sort of criminal charges against him. But it looks like he spiraled and got into drug addiction. And like I just read, was doing hard drugs and he hasn't posted in over a year, almost 2 years. And so who knows where the OP is, but man, that was a bad spiral. And his Reddit description even says, I don't really exist anymore, or I'm not supposed to. If I do, I'll be hunted down. And so I go back and forth between the here and now and the hereafter. It's much nicer on the other side. So who knows what that means? Does that mean he's on the run maybe? I don't know, because he says, no one knows I exist anymore. And if they do, I'll be hunted down. And so maybe he's on the run, or who knows? But very strange spiral. What do you guys think? My best friend OD'd, and I can't help but feel responsible. I'm not sure if this is the right place for this, but the mods can remove it if it's not. I'm 25 male, and my best friend OD'd about 6 months ago. He was only 24. I'll call him Leo. He was hooked on booger sugar, weed, and all other kinds of pills. One of them was some weird Russian cosmonaut drug he said they gave to astronauts. Crazy stuff. He bought everything on the dark web and was seriously good with computers. He was such a smart, funny, and amazing guy. I always wished he'd put that brain to better use. Leo had always struggled with addiction, just like his dad. He told us his dad was a deadbeat addict who had died years ago. He never went into much detail, and I never pushed him. I figured that's where his addictive side came from. We started experimenting really young, around mid-teenage years, with all sorts of pills, weed, and booger sugar. It screwed up a lot of us. I still fight with my K addiction now and then. Leo's main thing was booger sugar though. He'd do massive amounts, stay up for days, get into crazy debt, and get super paranoid. At one point, he owed 1,200 euros to some guy who had just got out of prison. He moved away for a while to try and get clean. For 2 or 3 years, nobody heard from him. When he came back to our hometown, he seemed sober. He was running, seeing a counselor, and actually looked happy. He'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia, but it was under control at the time. It felt like I had my best friend back. We'd game together like old times and talk conspiracy theories all night long. If Leo called you at 1 a.m., you knew you were in for a long one. After a few months, he started using again. Just small amounts while gaming at first. I warned him, but he said it wouldn't be a problem, and I believed him. Then he started taking sleeping tablets to come down after booger sugar binges. It went from a few grams to a lot of grams. He was funding it by gambling his benefits and by buying extra booger sugar to sell so he could use the profit himself. Things got really bad. He had a hole in his nose you could put a finger through, constant nosebleeds, and he was popping loads of pills. His daily routine was brutal. Wake up around 5 p.m., do a ton of booger sugar, sell through the night, take all of his pills around 4 or 5 a.m., smoke some weed, and pass out. He was still living with his mom, and she kept telling him to stop. We all did. I wish I'd done more to help. The weekend it happened, some stuff went down that still feels off to me. He got robbed at his back door by someone he thought he could trust. That destroyed him, and he went on a massive booger sugar binge. I was texting and calling him nonstop. I loved him like a brother. Then he went quiet. His mom had said she was getting his uncle from Ireland to come take him away and sort his head out. I told him it might be a good idea, but he didn't want to hear it. The night before the uncle was supposed to show up, Leo stopped answering his phone. A couple days later, we heard there'd been a police car at his mom's house. Some friends went round to knock on the door and ask what was going on. His mom opened it and just said, "He's dead," before slamming the door in our faces. He'd done his usual routine, taken his sleeping pills after the booger sugar, gone into the kitchen to roll a joint, and OD'd right there on the floor. Legs crossed, weed half rolled in his hands. His mom found him like that the next morning. I knew exactly what he was taking and how dangerous it was. I stood by and didn't do enough. Now he's gone. Later, we found out the uncle was actually his dad, the one he'd said was dead all those years. He must have really hated him. That question still eats at me. Did Leo do it on purpose because his dad was coming to take him away? He was smart. He knew all the dosages inside out. He'd even told me the lethal amounts to try and reassure me when I worried. I'll probably never know if it was an accident or if he chose to go. Maybe that's for the best. A month before he died, my girlfriend and I had split up. I still loved her. Leo told me he'd help me get her back. After he passed, she saw the fundraiser for his funeral and reached out. We're back together now. In a weird way, he kept his promise. But I'll always feel like I let him down. Rest in peace, brother. See you on the other side. I robbed a man of $15,000 and don't feel bad about it at all. Okay, it all starts about 5 years ago as I worked as a cashier at a gas station. Every day, about 4 p.m., a certain construction worker would come in and flirt with me. Even after several days of me telling him I don't feel comfortable with him doing that, after his persistent flirting, he proceeds to buy lottery tickets. Today, he bought a ticket and won the exact amount of money he bought the original ticket for back. He tells me to buy another card with that money, and out of nowhere, the dude won $15,000. At the time, I was shocked, but I kept a straight face. I then told him the card wasn't worth anything, and he never questioned me as he left the store. He won't ever know, but I hope this is karma to him for being a douche. I still have the ticket, and I'm not sure what to do with it. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, "You're a shitty person if you actually think you can justify stealing $15,000 of a dude who wouldn't stop flirting with you. If this dude comes back regularly, give him his damn ticket." And someone else says, "You're a loser, and I wish the worst for you." And someone else says, "I seriously hope you don't plan to cash it in. Not only is what you did wrong, and in no way karma for someone being pushy and rude in their flirtations, but you realize this sub has over 1 million subscribers, right? Not to mention people that come here by chance aren't subs. What you did was illegal, and you already run a risk of being caught, even before you confess to what you did online in a public forum. If someone was motivated, they could easily trace this back to you. Whether you apologize to him and give it back and hope to God he forgives you and doesn't try and press charges is your prerogative. But please don't try and benefit from this monetarily when what you've done is theft. Wife of 15 years admitted to cheating. I am dead inside. My wife and I have been together for 15 years. She recently admitted to cheating on me. It was early in the relationship, maybe around the first year. We were in a rough patch. It was bad for a few weeks, but eventually we made up and everything was fine again. We spent the next 15 years building a life together. During that time, we both went back to school and received 2 degrees, 4 total between us. We moved in together. We got engaged. We got married. We bought a house. We had kids. And then one day she calls me into the room. She's sitting on the couch she's crying. I don't know why. She tells me, totally out of the blue, that she cheated on me. It was during that rough patch in the first year. She just couldn't hold it in anymore. She wanted there to be no secrets between us. I wasn't mad. That was a little strange. I thought I should feel outraged. I figured it was because I loved her so much. Love conquers all, so I thought that I forgave her. I did feel a strange, subtle sensation. I didn't understand it at the time, so I ignored it. As the days and months went on, I started to lose interest in things that I enjoyed. I stopped doing projects around the house. I didn't talk much to my wife. I was just kind of going through the motions. It gets a tiny bit worse every single day, almost imperceptibly so. Now I understand what that feeling was. That weird, subtle twinge deep inside me. It was my heart breaking. I am hopelessly depressed. My marriage is a sham, and my life is a lie. I've spent my entire adult life pouring everything I had into this relationship, only to find out that she poisoned it way back at the starting line. I don't want much out of life. My parents split up when I was very little because one of them cheated, and I had a terrible childhood because of it. My goal in life, ever since I was a teenager, was to rebuild the life that was taken away from me so that one day I could give it to my eventual children. And I had done it. I married the woman that I loved. We lived in a nice house in a good school district, and we had healthy, happy kids. Most people go through life without ever realizing their dreams. I achieved mine before I was 30. And now the dream is a nightmare. That home is a prison. I get up every morning and convince myself to live the life for one more day. I don't know what to do. Edit. Wow. I really didn't expect so much feedback. Thanks to all who have taken the time to respond. Even the trolls. Some of this stuff made me laugh. I still don't know what we're gonna do. There is a lot of different advice here, and that has given me a lot of perspective. I think that's what I need the most right now. If nothing else, you guys have given me some new ways to think about this, so thank you to everyone who has given me legitimate support no matter which side you fall on. I guess there is also some confusion about the timeline. If anyone is interested, the wedding and the starts of our family were both before age 30. I am pushing 40 now. The scariest videos on the internet aren't the ones made for entertainment. They're the ones that were never meant to be seen. Home videos made in secret. Videos captured by the very people behind the crimes. Never intended for the public, never meant to be found. And yet, they were. Hidden away on old tapes, left behind on hard drives, or discovered long after everything was already over. Today, we're looking at some horrifying home videos that captured something terrifying. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get into it. Peeping Tom. Fall, 2007. Macon, Georgia. Two boys are sitting in their dormitory bedroom, and a conversation is taking place that will change their lives forever. The pair are both freshmen, newly introduced, and getting along well. They study at the Mercer University School of Law, a prestigious school with less than 400 students, and ranking amongst the top schools in the nation. Earlier that day, the two boys went to class as usual. Mercer School of Law prides itself on small, intimate classrooms, where students can collaborate on projects and take a vested interest in each other's education. And this meant that for the two boys, they knew everyone immediately. And as they're talking about their day and about their classmates, The conversation takes a shocking turn. If you were to commit a murder, how would you get away with it? One boy asks. The second boy replies, take off the arms, legs, and head, so nobody can identify the body. But to the first boy, this seems illogical, and he says so. I've studied forensics, he says. You should destroy the remains, not just dispose of them. And his friend coldly replies, I like my way better. Years later, law student Matthew Garrison would be asked about this conversation. He remembers it as something of a thought experiment, a trolley problem, something to pass the time before him and his roommate went to sleep. Matthew wasn't seriously asking. He had no way of knowing that his roommate wasn't just passing the time. He was deathly serious. And that roommate would commit a crime so gruesome and disturbing, it would scar Matthew Garrison and the town of Macon, Georgia, forever. June 17th, 2011, Maryland. Lauren Giddings, a vibrant young woman of 27, had been smiling all evening. She's the oldest of 3 siblings, and today, her younger sister Caitlin was finally married. As the maid of honor, Lauren has spent the past couple of days making sure everything would go smoothly. And it had. She stood by her sister at the altar. She smiled for the I do's, clapped for the kiss, and when it was over, congratulated her baby sister, formerly a bride, now a wife. Lauren hadn't been back home in Maryland since Christmas, and although she had just graduated from the prestigious Mercer University School of Law and desperately needed to study for the upcoming bar exam, she made the trip up from Georgia to celebrate. But as soon as that wedding was over, Lauren would need to head back to university. Everyone already knew. As soon as Lauren got back to Mercer, she'd be wrestling with her law books. She was a hard worker like that. President of her school's Federalist Society, top marks across all of the classes. She was brilliant and just as kind-hearted. So after a long day of dancing and laughing, Lauren wished the newlyweds farewell and off she went, back to Mercer University. June 27th, back in Maryland. Younger sister Caitlin was settling into her new marriage. She spent time with her family and her husband. She didn't even have time to check her cell phone. She was so busy answering texts and calls of congratulations, and it was a wonderful, blissful busy. But there was a feeling in her gut that she couldn't shake. It had been 10 days since Lauren had returned to university. And in all that time, Lauren hadn't made contact. Not with her father, or her mother, or her newlywed sister. No one had heard anything. Caitlin reminded herself what Lauren had told her, that once she returned to school, she would completely dedicate herself to her studies. That much was reasonable. But to drop contact for so long, more than a week, that was odd. But although Caitlin was getting nervous, she trusted her sister. And besides, Caitlin was newly married. Everything was probably fine back in Georgia, so she let go of her concerns and tried to enjoy herself. But as the unease grew heavier and more paramount, on June 29th, just 2 days later, Caitlin finally received a phone call. But it wasn't from Lauren. It was from Lauren's close friend. She was calling to see if Caitlin had heard anything from her sister. Of course, Caitlin had not, but she'd call around, see if anyone else had. She began searching her phone for people to call, and realized she had missed some text messages in the flurry of congratulations. Have you seen Lauren? Lauren hasn't been answering her phone? Is Lauren still in Maryland with you? Caitlin, now panicking, begins making her own phone calls. Close friends of Lauren, staying nearby the campus. One after the other. No one not a single person has heard from Lauren. The next call she makes is to the Macon police station. Her father drives down immediately, and her mother makes plans to fly down the next day. The family, together, will search for the missing Lauren. But they won't be looking for very long. By the following day, on June 30th, the town of Macon is swarming with police. In Lauren's apartment, they find her keys, wallet, and cell phone, but no Lauren. They begin a thorough search of her entire apartment building, trying to find any clues that point to what might have happened to the missing Lauren Giddings. And down in the laundry room, they find just that. A bloodied hacksaw. Lauren was murdered. And within the hour, pieces of Lauren start turning up.
Person that was living there?
Yeah, Lauren was my neighbor. We're just trying to find out where she is at this point. I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I mean, the last time anyone heard from her was an email that she sent out, and no one's heard from her since.
Did you see her hang out with anyone at the time or anything like that?
I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything. I mean, you always hear noise outside, but it's just people walking by pretty much.
And she just recently graduated from Mercer?
Yeah, she and I we were both JD students. We graduated back in May.
What kind of person was she? I mean, what did you see?
I mean, she's as nice as can be. I mean, very personable, very much a people person.
Do you know any enemies she might have had, somebody that might want to hurt her?
No, we don't know where she is. I mean, the only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her. Because we went over. One of her friends had a key. We went inside and tried to see if there was anything amiss, but I mean, she had a door jamb that was sitting right by it, so there was no sign that anyone broke in. I mean, the door was locked when everyone got here. I mean, we just don't know where she is.
What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of. I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body.
Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? Like, they took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. So that's why we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir?
I think I need to sit down.
Okay.
The interview you just watched was produced by WXGA, a local Georgia news station, and the man was neighbor and graduate law student Stephen McDaniel. His despair, hearing that Lauren Giddings is dead, is undeniable. Her torso was discovered in a nearby trash can, and only by chance. The trash truck was an hour late. Had it arrived on time, no one would have discovered Lauren's remains. But someone else had a different perspective to offer. Watching from home, Matthew Garrison sees his old freshman roommate getting interviewed by WXGA, and he remembers that late night conversation from years earlier. As soon as Matthew learned about the case, the missing girl, and the discovered torso on his old college campus, he knew. He knew it could only be Stephen McDaniel. People would tell me, "Your roommate is effing crazy," Matthew Garrison told journalist David Latt. Nobody in our social circle had any problem believing it. Matthew informs the police, explains his suspicions, and Stephen McDaniel is promptly arrested. They interrogate him. Where had he been? What had he been doing? But the former law student doesn't budge. He ignores the questions he doesn't like and refuses others. When asked if officers can search his apartment or his phone records, he receives them similarly, with an absolute refusal. They ask him about a pair of fresh scratches on his torso. They say, those scratches look consistent with fingernail scratches. McDaniel claims he scratched himself sleeping, but the police aren't having it. They interrogate him for half the night, awaiting a search warrant, and when they get it, they find blood in McDaniel's apartment. He is arrested and his cell phone seized. In his camera roll, a chilling video. McDaniel had been stalking Lauren for months. He was obsessed with her and intent on killing her. But he needed to see what her apartment looked like. So he taped his cell phone to his stick, and here we see him scouting the living room, planning his senseless killing. McDaniel would later confess to the killing. Using a stolen master key, he snuck into Lauren's apartment in the night, wearing a mask and gloves. He strangled her to death while she slept. Then he dragged her to his nearby apartment and dismembered her. While most of her remains were discarded in a campus dumpster, which were taken to the landfill and never recovered, McDaniel is currently serving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 30 years served. Today, he continues filing appeals and making pleas for his release, insisting in one form or another that he was innocent and deserves a second chance. But for Lauren's family, there is no appeal. There is no second chance. Only the vacancy he created in their lives. A daughter who will never come home, no matter how much they plead. And hopefully, regardless of his knowledge of the law, he spends the rest of his life behind bars. The Redwood City Burn. August 15th, 1989, Stockton, California. It was a scorching hot day at summer's end. Alfonso Lua, driving with family on Interstate 205, was eager to get home and cool off. They'd been driving for some time now, and only had a little while to go, when their car suddenly overheated. Frustrated, the family pulled over, and while Alfonso inspected the damage, his wife and son looked on, fanning themselves in the 90-degree heat. The car was burnt out. There was no doubt about that. Probably an issue with the radiator. He wouldn't be able to fix it himself, at least not anytime soon. Alfonso comes up with a plan. Walk to the nearest house and ask for help. The family will join him. So together, they march down the boiling roadside, eager to find a savior. But early on in their journey, they discovered something hidden in a bush, deep onto the shoulder near Hanson Road. A camouflage jacket. It caught their eye, and curiosity got the better of them. It looked in good condition, not something someone would just throw away or forget about. So they decided to take a quick detour to check out the jacket. Alfonso reached into one of the pockets. Inside, a collection of cassettes. Recognizably, they were heavy metal music. And an unlabeled videotape. Again, struck by curiosity, he wondered what might be on the strange videotape. Regardless, they first needed to find help. So he pocketed the items he'd found and continued plodding along. Eventually, he found help, thankfully, and was able to get home without anyone suffering from heat stroke. But when they got home, they all wondered together, what might be on the videotape? Back in 1989, every house had a VCR, and so did Alfonso. So he tucked in the videotape, rewound the footage, and hit play. What the family saw next was nothing short of horrifying. a roaring house fire, and a madman ranting and laughing at his accomplishment, setting fire to someone's home. The family was terrified. They turned the footage over to local authorities, and just like the family, the local firemen were just as terrified. "I've never run across anything as eerie as that tape," said Frank Curry, fire captain for the California Department of Forestry. "It frightened me. As a matter of fact, I thought about it that night when I went to bed." Almost immediately, Frank and his team began scouring the video for clues as to where exactly the fire had been started, and more importantly, who did it. First, they analyzed the footage piece by piece. Too dark to see any landmarks, they instead turned to words of the madman, carefully replaying the video to make out hushed words, sentences, and phrases. Phrases like, "Look at the fire. This is beautiful. Look at it. You see what I can do? Do you see what I can do? This is my domain, my hell." Chilling words. And although it gave investigators a view into the mind of whatever maniac had done this, it didn't bring them any closer to a location or a suspect. But then, a name. "Look at it, Omar. This is what I've been doing on your week's vacation. I said I'll do it. I said I'll do it." This was a major clue, but a vague one. Who was Omar? Was that the homeowner? Away on vacation? Unaware that their property was burning to ashes? Could it be that the arsonist was a construction worker and Omar the property manager? If the arsonist had been fired, he would have plenty of reason to go destroy the home, but maybe not. Or was Omar a victim living in the home? Was it a murder? A disgruntled worker's revenge? A spontaneous act of anarchy? The name, though helpful, brought about more questions than answers. And before long, they were trying other methods. First, you can hear firemen responding to the property, attempting to put it out, but it was too vague a lead. 500,000 house fires happen each year in the United States, and many of those are in California. There would be no way to track down which firemen had responded to this fire without clearer details. But visually enhancing the footage proved too difficult and too fruitless. Instead, they made a couple of deductions. The house appears to be a wood-framed, one-story ranch with 2 chimneys. There was another house on the left side of the picture, partially hidden by a white trailer. The trailer may indicate that the burning house was under construction. The setting is uncluttered, perhaps rural. The arsonist gives the date as 1988, and TV commercials recorded onto another part of the tape verify that date. Because fire engines do arrive, it seems fairly certain that somewhere a report of this fire is on file. But the actual location of the house fire was a dead end. The inciting incident, when the Lau family discovered the camouflage jacket on Interstate 205, was too vague a placement. Interstate 205 is a 37-mile-long highway that feeds into several of the state's major highways. That means anyone could have been the arsonist. They could have been from Oregon or Nevada or Washington State, and they'd have no way of knowing. But then, as Frank was debating the interstate and the jacket, a thought occurs to him. What happened to it? Captain Frank Curry met with Alfonso Lua on Interstate 205, and together they searched for the camouflage jacket. And remarkably, it was still there. Nobody had touched it since the Luas, and although the Luas had found the tapes and cassettes, they hadn't found everything. In the pockets, previously dismissed as garbage, was a wooden pestle used to grind up herbs, and nearby, a camouflage glove, and a ceramic skull. Given the information from the video, Captain Frank began to suspect the arsonist may have been practicing Satanism, dark magic, rituals. It's obvious to Frank, this man, whoever he is dangerous. Frank knew that many serial killers of his day began as arsonists. The terrible son of Sam, David Berkowitz, was responsible for murdering 6 people in New York City in 1976. But before his killing spree, he was known as an arsonist, responsible for over 2,000 fires all throughout the Big Apple. Frank, for his part, wanted to stop the arsonist in the video before he could become the next son of Sam. But the jacket was the only lead he had. Without anywhere else to take the investigation, he decides to try a different strategy altogether. They needed a location. That much was clear. And in order for them to find it, they'd need help from the public. Unsolved Mysteries was a groundbreaking true crime and paranormal documentary series that premiered in 1987, blending reenactments, interviews, and ominous narration. The show was created to help investigators solve actual, real cases, asking the public for assistance at the end of every show. Created by John Cosgrove and Terry Dunn Muir, and famously hosted by Robert Stack, its stark visual style, chilling music, and direct appeals to viewers for tips gave it the feeling of a public investigation unfolding in real time, turning ordinary audiences into Crime Stoppers. Frank submits the arsonist footage to Unsolved Mysteries, and within minutes of the episode's first airing, hundreds of tips start flooding in. But one viewer would change the course of the mystery for good. Ed Tarantino is watching at home when he makes the startling revelation. The burning house depicted in the video was the house just behind him. He remembers when it happened. The home was unoccupied. It was still under construction in 1988, a year before the tape was discovered. It had mysteriously burned to the ground. In 1989, it was rebuilt, but the fact remains. He might not be able to make out any details, but Ed is certain it's the same house. He immediately calls the telecenter to report the information, and suddenly, they have their location. 60 miles away in Redwood City, California, a fire captain can confirm the viewer's suspicions. Captain John Delgenges knew every fire that happened in his county. He remembers responding to the burning house, and even more remarkably, he recorded it for training purposes. Setting up a camera nearby to capture their extinguishing of the home, the two captains compare their footage, and finally, without any shadow of a doubt, they have their location: Redwood City. And just as quickly after discovering the location, they discover more startling and frightening information. Between 1987 and 1989, they connected another 10 fires to the one depicted in the home video, meaning that whoever the arsonist was, this wasn't an isolated incident. He was on a rampage, and if they didn't stop him soon, just like the son of Sam, he might get bored of destroying unoccupied homes and start killing people. But who is Omar? They discovered that the name Omar isn't connected to the property in any way. Not the construction crew, not the owners, the realtors, no one. The only person Omar could be connected to is the arsonist himself. But their theory wouldn't be confirmed until the following year, when another viewer, Doris Lance, watching reruns of Unsolved Mysteries, has a realization. She wonders if the unidentified Omar might be her 17-year-old neighbor. The boy was known for troublemaking. Maybe he had information on the fires? She calls in the tip, and police take Omar in for questioning. At first, he denies any involvement, but after a couple of hours, he's ready to talk. He is the Omar from the video, and the arsonist is his friend. He had been on vacation during the actual fire, but his friend had told him beforehand. Omar didn't believe him, not until he saw the videotape his friend had made. "Look at it, Omar. I said I'll do it. I said I'll do it." Omar's friend was 19 years old, and his name was John. They began surveilling John's home. For weeks, they watched the boys coming and going. Even though Omar gave them a name, they had no concrete proof that John had set the fires. Not really. So they waited to see if they could catch him in the act. And after about a month, they did. In the night, without warning, smoke begins billowing out from John's house, and a humming orange glow starts to emanate from the garage. Firemen arrive on the scene within minutes, and inside they see John. He'd set his garage on fire. The fire is quickly put out, and the boy is arrested, giving the firemen free rein to investigate. And what they found inside changes the case completely. Dissected animal corpses, bloody knives, a Freddy Krueger mask and gloves, a collection of newspaper clippings connected with other fires in the area, and more videotapes. Captain John's theory was correct after all. This boy was not just an arsonist. He was a psychopath, and his cruel behavior was evolving beyond fires. In 1991, John pled guilty to 1 count of arson. But because of his age, the court pushed for rehabilitation over severe punishment, and he served time in juvenile hall. His full identity was never released to the public, and after his release, he disappeared back into ordinary life. No public record, no interviews, no known whereabouts, just a slew of burnt buildings left in his wake, an eerie videotape, and one haunting question that lingers decades later. If that videotape hadn't been found on the side of the road, how many more fires would have followed? And if he was getting worse, how many people could have lost their lives? Jeffrey Epstein's home videos. Little St. James. The infamous island Jeffrey Epstein used to traffic dozens of young girls, holding them against their will for weeks at a time. We are all far too familiar with it by now. The high-definition lens of today gives it an eerie, almost distant quality. But in this recently released footage, we start to see it in a whole new light. We don't know who recorded this, in what year, or at what time. But whoever they were took the time to capture the scenery. The footage is clearly damaged, but we can still make out clear details. Blue, crystalline waves breaking on the edge of the sand. Palm trees, rock walls lining a simple road that leads down into the island. A golf cart perched at the edge of a hill. The footage cuts to sea level, on the water. We see the stone walls again, carving into the forest. A dark entrance leads further inland. And more golf carts, 3 more. This isn't a small group of criminals. operating on some patch of sand in the middle of the ocean. It's a large-scale operation, and over this quiet, peaceful landscape, the horrors taking place seem even more unbelievable. The camera cuts back to the hillside. If you look closely, you can see the faint imprint of a road slicing through the hillside. The transit system on the island is basic, but terrifyingly extensive. The American flag flies high, normally a symbol for unity, democracy, and law, tainted by association. From above, it looks like something you'd book on holiday. A shimmering cove, a water trampoline, even a yacht. But just beside it, we see the infamous baby blue rooftops of St. James Island. Up until this time, we've only seen them from distant aerial views, but now we get to see every terrifying detail of the tropical hellscape. And somewhere inside is a monster, waiting for his next victim. Warning: the footage you're about to watch is incredibly disturbing. A blurred out victim is performing for Epstein.
That's what you'll be learning today.
I'm learning some
Yay!
my boyfriend's back.
Exactly. Brilliant.
Mismatch.
This is Mismatch Teacher. She's mismatched today. It's just for Jeffrey's amusement.
You never know. See what he did in audio?
That's true. Yes, but it's all within the own privacy.
The rest of the footage is too graphic to show on YouTube, but needless to say, even though it's blurred, it's horrific. Two girls coerced into practicing tonight's entertainment. Let's cut to back on the hilltops. A helicopter is doing tricks for two onlookers, a man and a woman.
That's crazy. He'll like sneaks up on you.
What?
He'll sneaks up on you.
The pilot begins doing dangerous flips. Normally this would be regulated, but there are no rules on a private island. Epstein has total control here. And who else is in attendance on the island? A quick shot of what looks to be Epstein's private pilot. And as we follow the helicopter, a clearer shot of the men accompanying our camerawoman.
That's crazy.
Circus girl wanted a ride. Happy New Year. Yes.
A public park of some sort. What looks to be an old building or manor.
On the road. Just trying to get all the layout.
After some research, the building she's getting the layout for is the South Gate House of the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, located in Central Park. The building was used to regulate the city's water supply. So the question is, why does the unknown camerawoman want the layout? Well, let's keep watching.
Oh, really? You remember what happened in Snelling?
Oh, wow.
The first fight.
And it used to be part of the water supply of New York, Manhattan.
Shot in Snelling. But they knew.
Assuming we are still in the same area, it's reasonable enough to assume we are in the South Gate House. The machinery we see here, including an AC electric generator, would have been used to generate power from the river. The camerawoman continues to catalog the space. Not just the machinery, again, she's cataloging the layout. And we're about to find out what for.
Is it Grumman? That is our boat.
That's cool.
Why is it here?
You know, there's an opportunity right now on the deck. Use it for the crew chief.
You could build out on the water?
Well, I mean, everything's open now. I mean, there's no.
It does always have pump houses. You see that we could do different things with that's a northern pump house, but they're much smaller than this. This is the prime one.
Okay. You could be all connected or whatnot.
Somehow, I don't know what could happen. They don't have to be.
Is it Grumman?
The steps are pretty. About halfway, a little space between you as you go down on the steps. Don't everyone get on the steps.
Yeah, you can't really see anything.
In the dark underbelly of the city, bathed in the dim green infrared, the group continues to discuss the inner workings of the pump house, what it was used for, and what it could be turned into.
I have a night shot on here, infrared, so it's actually picking up.
Hey, it's all that's nice and cool.
Oh, did it come down here? So cool. Just get this part.
Back on the surface, the camera woman happily hums as she scans the exterior. I'd like to remind you, this isn't just any woman. We can't confirm their identity, but considering this footage was collected from the same camera, and its inclusion in the files, we can allegedly assume this woman was sent here by Epstein. And if you had any suspicions about what their intentions for the property are, a government building mind you, well, they're about to tell us.
Because you could sort of have this already planned out for something, so then what part is available to do something with?
We actually don't have any funding for this.
Oh, okay, so that's, okay. So you just need funding for what you already have in mind to do?
Yes.
Okay.
And in a sense, there is basically a top lot geared towards smaller kids.
Mm-hmm.
The large piece out front adjacent to Umpire Rock, for older kids, and is also basically a giant water feature. At the high point, water will actually runs down there. This area out in front will be a large open area with a synthetic turf play surface. And then there'll be swings and kind of an old-fashioned playground off to the south.
That makes it very clear. Epstein, or whoever this woman is, were involved in an investment or acquisition of the property. Or at the very least, they were in talks to help fund a public park with sections for younger and older kids. But why did she need to see the inside of the building? The underground? What was the intended purpose of cataloging the interior if their only intention was to fund an exterior playground? Well, we'll never know. And as I was reviewing the footage, it seemed to be over. But I was wrong. Hidden at the end of the tape, sandwiched between two empty blue screens, is 2 seconds of footage. The camera is turned on facing an unknown woman, and then quickly whips around to the desk in front of her. On it, a document that's too blurry to read, and some letterhead that reads, Jeffrey Epstein. Throughout the tape, we've seen numerous women manning the camcorder. And what their relation is to Epstein, we have no way of knowing. But the number of people we saw in the footage, the 3 blurred out people, and the several men we counted earlier, including Epstein himself, makes this a startling piece of evidence. And this isn't an isolated tape. There's new footage coming out every single day, as people continue to sift through the thousands of videos, each time discovering new, first-hand documentation of the horrors that Jeffrey Epstein inflicted on his innocent victims, and the ways he captured each and every moment. Here we see Epstein dancing with an alleged victim. It seems lighthearted, like they're both having fun. I think this is what makes the Epstein videos so confusing for most people. These girls, although they look like they're having fun, have been systematically manipulated by powerful people. And no matter how jubilant it looks, the terrible, traumatic abuses these women suffered can never be fully communicated. But this is what abuse, real, everyday abuse looks like. It almost looks normal. But beneath the surface, darker currents are running. This footage has no audio. Jeffrey is presenting an alleged victim to the camera. We don't hear anything, but there seems to be some light conversation happening. She reaches out to touch him. We can't see her face, but the gesture seems almost playful. But then we begin to see the terrible truth. He gives her instruction. Then he gets a bit impatient. And what happens next is beyond words. This is something we saw in the original camcorder footage. Provocative acts. Women teaching other girls to do the same. This is a pattern we continue to see throughout the newly released footage. A powerful man with more money and influence than any of us could possibly imagine, taking pleasure in the strong-arm acquisition of property, prestige, and his disgusting desires. Jeffrey Epstein didn't just abuse his victims. He wanted them to perform. He treated corporations, the government, and his own victims like playthings. He used them for his own entertainment, and he cataloged everything so he could relive it every single day. His own personal movie where he got to decide the ending. And today, as more files have come to light, it's become all the more important that we continue to press the issue. Because only after the last file is released and every perpetrator is brought to justice, only then can the terrible performance end.